One Piece Supreme Control, Chapter 361-380. Chapter 361_. If the sword is made, then it will cooperate with Yang Qing's exchange of sword immortal technique. Such formidable power, coupled with the devil fruit, Yang Qing can no longer imagine what the scene will be like. However, the only certainty is that Yang Qing is looking forward to that moment. To become stronger, to become stronger, to become stronger, is his pursuit at this time. In the afternoon, he began to walk out of the room, and then went to the auction house, or the weapons store. Money has become a number for him. With the outflow of a lot of money, countless swords with exquisite workmanship, which are already very good for ordinary people, came into his hands. Moreover, some rare materials in the auction house, and Halu stone, were collected by him. In the evening, Yang Qing sat cross-legged in the house, frowning at the material about 1 meter high in front of him, and the more than 20 long swords placed beside him, thinking. These materials are easy to say, just smelting, but these long swords, will it be a pity after smelting? After pondering for a moment, a light flashed in Yang Qing's eyes. Forget it, the better the grade, the better the material inside it. In the future, the materials I want to polish the young sword are not only these, and there is no pity. Closing his eyes, Yang Qing began to recover his spirit. 15 minutes later, he opened his eyes. Fire. With a soft drink, the void made a fire. The flame was red at first, with the same temperature as a normal flame, but after 3 breaths, it suddenly changed color and turned white. As time passed, the flame became more and more white, and there was even a hint of blue in it. By this time, its temperature is already terrifying, and it can easily incinerate steel. Yang Qing exerted 50% of his strength to condense one place, and he gathered this group of flames to smelt all the materials in front of him. Take the essence and get rid of the dross. This is a necessary condition for making the material of the sword young. Otherwise, the material of the sword qi produced will not pass the test, and the power will drop a lot. Even if the young sword is not tough enough to withstand the coercion of the sword formation and the sword spirit, it will break apart, and all previous efforts will be forfeited. So at this moment, Yang Qing was very careful. With a wave of his right hand, the metal like a hill of metal began to fly into the flames. Chi-chi. The metal burned, changing from solid to liquid, making a crisp sound. Over time, some of the liquid becomes gaseous and disappears into it. The metal liquid in the flame begins to decrease in quality as it burns. The magazines in it were all burned and disappeared. The calcination process was very long. Yang Qing sat cross-legged on the ground. Slowly waving his right hand, pieces of metal stones were sent into the flame, and gradually the day passed. The metal on the ground had not disappeared, and he turned his attention to the long sword beside him. After 3 breaths, the long swords also flew up and entered the flame. After about 3 days, there was no more metal or long sword in Yang Qing's room. In front of him, there was a scorching flame, which was constantly flowing with colorful transparent crystal liquids. Purple, blue, orange, red, and black liquids blended and flowed with each other. Under the scorching of the flame, their mass continued to decrease, and from time to time gas of different colors floated into the air, and then disappeared. After another 5 days, these liquids of different colors have reached a point where they cannot be melted. No gas appeared anymore. In other words, these liquids were the essence of the metal, and the magazines had all disappeared under the scorch of the flames. Woo! Taking a breath, Yang Qing began to wave his hands, using the power of controlling the fruit, and began to shape it. This is just the simplest shape of the sword. If you encounter good metal in the future, you can still join it, and it will not affect the development of the sword. On the other hand, Yang Qing did not have any cultivation spells, nor did he have the legendary 3 real fires, but he could smelt metal, but he relied on the power of the control fruit against the sky. I have to say that this fruit is worth $1 billion. After Yang Qing developed to awakening, he was almost omnipotent. Energy transformation, control everything. Today, the power of this fruit is still growing. He can also be stronger, which is an extremely terrifying thing. Gradually, the molten metal in the flame turned into a sharp blade shape under the control of Yangqing. Then there is the body of the sword, the hilt. This is just an approximate appearance. It is still liquid in the flame, and it flows slowly, which is very magical. Subsequently, Yangqing lowered the temperature of the flame step by step. As the flames dissipated, the appearance of the young sword in the air began to appear. It is about 3 feet and 3 long, and the whole body is dark in color. There are traces of spots on it, like stars and spots. It is irregular, but it has a strange beauty. At the edge of its blade, blue silk threads surround it, and it can be noticed that it has the color and taste of Halu stone. This is a young sword condensed from the essence of metal minerals, which is very extraordinary. Even as ordinary iron, it has surpassed the vast majority of swords. However, in the casting process of the spirit sword, it did not even complete the first step. It was just a conceptual sword. Water. The ice water came from the void, poured on the hot sword chick, and the white mist began to rise. But on the way to ascension, he was dispersed by Yangqing's wave. This process, Yangqing is very slow. Too fast will easily damage the texture of the sword. Young must be careful, step by step. 3 minutes later, Yangqing stretched out his right hand and held the somewhat heavy sword hatchling. Different from the thin body of the Longchen sword, this young sword is a bit thick. It is also very heavy when held in the hand, like an unbladed épée. Fantastic! This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. It's just a young sword, but Yangqing felt a sharper aura than the Longchen sword, and besides this sharpness, there was a wisp of heaviness. Like the sharpest sword in the world, after wrapping the tip of his sword in a scabbard. The kind of Zuhua introverted, resulting in the feeling of heritage. After covering up all this sharp aura, this young sword has become. Inexplicably, Yangqing felt this way, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Holding the sword chick with one hand, Yangqing slowly felt everything about this new sword. Mostly, he took a black cloth and wrapped it, completely making it extinct in front of the world. Chapter 362 I'm satisfied. In the days that followed, Yangqing carried a dark package and wandered around Rog Town, looking for suitable ore, or swords. Every time he encounters a suitable one, he integrates it into the sword young to enhance its ability. And with the addition of materials, the sword chicks are also constantly changing, and the dark sword body begins to change color. Just relying on this moment, Yangqing can't judge what the sword young will look like when it is really completed. About a week later, Yangqing was surprised to see Mahawk with a black suit and a calm breath at the joint of Rog Town. "Why are you here?" Hawkeye was the first to speak. This man stared at Yangqing with sharp eyes and was very curious. "Come here to play," Yangqing said casually. "The real situation, of course, will not say much. 5 emperors shouldn't stay here. The new world is in chaos, without you suppressing the scene. Is it really okay?" Hawkeye frowned. "Now, it's a time of peace." Yangqing waved his hand, then passed Hawkeye. "Then what about you? Why did you come here?" "Just to pass the time," Hawkeye said lightly. "Oh, to pass the time, do you have to bully children?" Yangqing teased. "Did you see it?" Hawkeye turned around suddenly, his eyes full of fierceness. Yangqing shook his head and said with a smile, "I'm not interested in watching such a doomed battle. I just think it's really interesting that you can actually use a sword. The younger generation of the new era should know how to go their way." Hawkeye said in a low voice, "And, that kid does have potential. I'm just guiding him. Then, you should also know that his target is you." Yangqing said with a smile. "Isn't Ace's target also you?" Hawkeye asked back. "Humph." Somewhat dumbfounded, Yangqing did not expect that he would be led by Eagle Eye, shrugged his shoulders, and left here. "Boring guy." Hawkeye looked at Yangqing's back, said coldly, and left with his sword behind his back. 3 days later, on a shore in Rog Town, a boat with a sheep's head on the front part docked. On the open sail, at the top of the mast is a flying pirate flag, on which is painted a skeleton with a straw hat, which looks very festive. After the ship docked steadily, the group got off the ship, then separated, and entered the town of Rog. In the room, Yang Qing's eyes moved, and a smile appeared on his face. Here they come. Then, my target should have appeared too. The Straw Hat Pirates came to Rogue Town, which was not much different from the original. The only difference, perhaps, is that there is no more Bucky the Joker. By the way, there is no more Aunt Arita. However, none of these matters. Yang Qing has many ways to draw out that guy. He walked out of the room, packed the package on his back, put on a blue baseball cap, and was wearing a black sports suit, and walked towards the center of Rogue Town very casually. About half an hour later, he saw Straw Hat Luffy standing under the execution stand. The corner of his mouth twitched. Yang Qing bent down, and then picked up a small stone on the ground. "Hey, Straw Hat Luffy!" he shouted loudly. Luffy was stunned, then turned his head to look at Yang Qing, and said with some puzzlement, "Who are you? Did you call me? You are the only one here, who am I not going to call you?" Yang Qing said with a smile, "What are you doing here? This is where Roger, the Pirate King, died. Ordinary people don't come here to hang out." After listening to Luffy, a smile appeared on his face. "Ha, is that right? I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who wants to become the Pirate King." Raising his eyebrows slightly, Yang Qing had an inexplicable feeling when he heard Luffy's words that were exactly the same as in the original book. "I'm here because I want to be the Pirate King too." Luffy showed a big smile, smiling happily. I have to say that this kid's smile is indeed very infectious, very confident and sunny. "Oh, is that so? Well, I'm going to be the Pirate King too." Yang Qing also laughed. "Let's try it out, you and I are more qualified, how about that?" Yang Qing's words made Luffy stunned for a moment, and then he really laughed out loud. "Okay. Then I'm welcome." The stone in Yang Qing's right hand suddenly bounced. "Huh." A sharp whistling sound came out, and suddenly there were more dark clouds in the sky, and thunder and lightning began to brew in it. Luffy saw a series of gas explosions in the air, and then his face changed greatly. The flying stone was too fast to avoid. Bang! The stone slammed into him unceremoniously, and the powerful force actually slammed his whole body to the ground. He rolled over 20 meters with his face, and slammed his head into the garden wall next to him, before he stopped. Luffy, who suffered a heavy blow, couldn't recover for a while. Yang Qing smiled step by step and came to Luffy. Then grabbed the ladder and start dragging from the ground. "It seems that your strength is not good enough. In this way, you can't become the Pirate King." Stepping up the steps of the execution platform, Yang Qing began to drag Luffy towards the highest peak step by step. "In comparison, I am more qualified than you, Luffy." Luffy, who was being dragged, was hit by the stone. At this moment, he has not recovered. Luffy can't imagine that it is just a small stone. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. There was such a terrifying strength that he was completely weak and numb. Finally, the two came to the top position. Boom! The thunder and lightning in the sky roared loudly, and the dark clouds were already dense, covering the entire island. Looking up at the sky above, Yang Qing had an inexplicable smile on his face. "Interesting." He murmured 2 words, and he turned his eyes to the left and right. One was a swordsman with 3 knives, and the other was wearing a black suit and short blonde hair. The 2 of them were running towards them anxiously. "Hey, who are you? Let go of Luffy," the blonde man shouted loudly. "Let go of our captain. What are you going to do?" This is the swordsman of the 3 swords style. Yang Qing smiled slightly and ignored the 2. Instead, he looked at Luffy, who was being held on the execution platform by him, and asked with a smile. "How about this place as your execution ground? Monkey and Luffy, a place of death like Roger. Are you satisfied?" Luffy was a little weak at the moment, but the next moment, he raised his head with a big laugh and shouted. "Okay, I'm satisfied." Chapter 363 1-on-3. Then, in the terrified eyes of Zoro and Sanji, he said another sentence. "I'm sorry, my friends, I'm dying." Ha 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 ha. This foolish look doesn't even care about his own life or death. At this moment, Yang Qing, who was standing behind him, was a little stunned. As expected, it's the protagonist. Terrifying aura. Outsiders can't understand this kind of condescension that really puts life and death aside. This is very scary. There is a great fear between life and death, and no one is not afraid of death. People are born to survive, to run around and give everything for survival. They are not willing to face death. Death is terrifying in everyone's eyes. But if it appears, a guy who doesn't put life in his eyes. Such people are either lunatics or heroes, possessing faith and willpower beyond the reach of ordinary people. Compared with strong strength, this belief and willpower is the most terrifying. There is no doubt that Luffy is such a person. It is precisely because of this that in the difficulties in the future, he has not been defeated again and again, but has continued to win and become stronger. Then the corners of his mouth grinned, and an ice blue blade appeared in Yang Qing's right hand. The tip of the blade was pointing down, aiming at the neck of Luffy who was kneeling in front of him. Then, in the next moment, he stabbed suddenly. Boom! The sky was angry, and thunderbolts split from the dark clouds. Underneath it, Sanji and Zoro shouted loudly, and their faces changed drastically. Luffy! Click! The execution platform collapsed suddenly, and this thunder and lightning smashed on the execution platform, collapsing the entire platform. Ha ha ha, I'm not dead. Luffy's excited cry came out, and only then did the nervous Zoro sigh in relief, and hurriedly looked at Luffy who ran out of the ruins. Luffy, are you okay? Sanji asked loudly. Who is that guy? I think I've seen him. At this time, Yang Qing also walked out of the ruins step by step. The icy blue long sword was completely composed of solid ice and glowed with blue light. With a smile on his face, he stood not far in front of the three. I remembered, this guy is the man with Nuo Chigao. Nami knows him. Zoro suddenly said loudly, and then he glared at Yang Qing again. You, what the hell are you doing, man? At this moment, Yang Qing became extremely mysterious in the eyes of the three. He was obviously friends with Nokiki, but he suddenly attacked Luffy. What's even more frightening is that Luffy is not even the opponent's opponent. If it weren't for that thunder and lightning, I'm afraid Luffy would be dead now. Thinking of this, the two of them were full of anger. Well, who am I? You will know sooner or later. Yang Qing swung his sword, and then pointed at the three people present with a smile. Now, let's test how much you are capable. Luffy pressed the hat on his head, the smile on his face disappeared, and it became a little gloomy. When he laughs, it gives people a very relaxed and happy feeling, but at this moment, his face sinks, but it contains endless majesty, which greatly increases the pressure on others. As for Zoro, he tied the green cloth around his waist to the top of his head, and he took out all three swords. Sanji even lit a cigarette and looked at the person opposite dignifiedly. Pressure, invisible pressure. Although Yang Qing was relaxed, the pressure released silently was still not something that the three of them could resist. Facing the hostility of the three, Yang Qing was simply too relaxed, with a faint smile on his face. Go! Suddenly, Zoro shouted loudly, and the three of them bent their knees almost at the same time. The speed suddenly increased, and they rushed towards Yang Qing. A strong wind blew, blowing Yang Qing's robe. Rubber rubber. Luffy stretched his arms and called from a distance. At the same time, two figures have also arrived at the left and right sides of Yang Qing. Sanji jumped up, raised his legs high, the cigarette sparks in his mouth fell, and slammed down, the target pointed directly at Yang Qing's head. Zoro, two long swords, one in his mouth, three in total, all the blades aimed at Yang Qing. At this moment, his waist sank, his feet exerted force, and he turned sharply. It was the power of one turn, which generated huge kinetic energy, and the three knives flashed light and slashed towards Yang Qing's whole body. The cooperation of the three was extremely tacit, and they formed a very sharp attack. Against ordinary people, it was almost impossible to escape. But, unfortunately, they faced Yangqing. Seeing the color, the faint smile on his face remained, and Yangqing's eyes suddenly lit up. The next moment, his hands directly grabbed Luffy's fist, making the latter stagnate. Then he lightly took a step forward to the right, ingeniously dodging Sanji's cheating, making his face change. Immediately afterwards, his hands trembled, and Luffy in the distance was directly shaken back. At this moment, the ice blue long sword that was just thrown away just landed in front of his right hand. Grabbing the hilt of the sword, Yangqing swept to the right. Dang dang. 3 crisp voices came out, Soren's face changed greatly, all 3 swords were blocked, and he took 3 steps back towards the rear. How is it possible? At this moment, the 3 of them were all shocked. The person in front of him, incredibly powerful, was able to escape the joint attack of the 3 of them in an instant. Compared to the vast and vast sea, the 3 of you are still too weak. Yangqing shook his head and took a step forward. The ice blue long sword slashed out and attacked Sauron directly. Zoro's expression changed, and he hurriedly attacked. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Yangqing wielded a single sword with one hand, and the speed of the sword was as fast as light. In just 3 breaths, Sauron was slashed out by a sword, and fell heavily on the ground. The hands holding the sword kept trembling and shaking. Power, he felt a power that was completely unmatched. That man's sword speed and strength are much stronger than him, and the two are not on the same level at all. Then, Yangqing took a step forward and appeared in front of Shang-Chi Shi almost instantly. In the latter's horrified eyes, he punched. Bang! The energy came out of the body, and Sanji was so soft that he fell to the ground, losing his strength. Seeing this scene, Luffy made 2 moves in a row, and his 2 companions fell down, immediately furious. Sanji, Zoro. Damn, you. Crazy, Luffy fell into madness in an instant. However, nothing is of any use. Still only 1 step, Yangqing came behind Luffy. The long sword swung horizontally, and the blade touched Luffy's neck. Chapter 364 Goodbye Dorag. In the blink of an eye, Luffy will usher in his second death. At this moment, a cold, mature voice came from the depths of the street. Do you have to be so cruel to the younger generation? Death, Lucifer. Yangqing's eyebrows were the same, but the blade in his right hand did not cut off after all. Yo, Long, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. On the roof on the left side of the street, it seemed to appear suddenly, as if it had always existed. There was a figure standing, wearing a cloak, so that others could not see what was inside. Crash! The pouring rain suddenly fell, and the weather became very bad at this moment. The raindrops formed a curtain, fell from the air, hit the ground, and fell to pieces. The thunder in the sky became more manic. Yangqing and others were standing in the sky. The huge dark cloud vortex was slowly rotating, and the golden lightning inside was like a giant long, swimming and roaring, turning the gloomy sky, shades of light and darkness. Boom! Thunder and lightning made a roaring sound, flickering, rushing, descending from the sky, and then suddenly disappearing. The wind howled, and the rain poured. With a smile in Yangqing's eyes, he stared at the man standing on the roof. Call. When the wind picked up, the sound of the roof suddenly dissipated. When it reappeared, it was already 3 feet across from Yangqing. The wide cloak completely shrouded his face, making it difficult to see. But the flickering thunder and lightning illuminated the tattoos on his face very clearly. Let go of the man in the sea and let him get out of here. A deep voice came from under the cloak, containing an indescribable majesty and imposing manner. The ice blue long sword withdrew, and Yangqing let go of Luffy with a smile on his face. After Luffy was released, he nervously ran towards Zoro and Sanji. His flip-flops stomped on the road, making a clear sound. Sanji, Zoro, Luffy shouted anxiously. Ahem, we're fine. Sanji struggled to stand up. Although his face was pale, he could indeed see that he was not seriously injured. Zoro also stood up silently, his eyes fixed on the man in front of him. Figure. The three gathered together again, and turned their eyes to Yang Qing, their eyes full of fighting intent and solemnity. This strange guy's strength is beyond their imagination, completely crushing the three of them. The sea soldiers are here, I'm afraid this place is not suitable for us. The man hiding under the cloak said in a low voice. Several people present glanced at it, and sure enough, they saw the sound of dense footsteps in the alleyway, and then a large number of Marines ran out and rushed towards here. Oh, Yang Qing raised his eyebrows, but he didn't care much about the people who came. And the three of Luffy's faces also changed. They knew that if they were targeted by the Navy, it would be much more troublesome. Sanji, Zoro, let's go. Gather them, we should set sail. Luffy said in a condensed voice, his eyes fixed on Yang Qing. Okay, Zoro nodded. Go. Finally, after giving Yang Qing a deep look, the three of Luffy turned around and ran. When Yang Qing looked at the man in the cloak again, he found that the figure of the other party had gradually begun to dissipate. He was taken aback for a moment, then shrugged and smiled. Don't want to deal with me head-on. It's so boring. Turning around, Yang Qing ran to the other side, and after 3 breaths, his figure also disappeared here. On this side, the three of Luffy ran fast. They followed the alley and headed for the place where the pirate ship was. Luffy, how did you meet that guy? Sanji asked with a solemn expression. Just under the execution stand, he said he was going to be the Pirate King, and then, we started fighting. Luffy said loudly, then a little disappointed, I'm not his opponent. Don't talk nonsense, let's go, there are so many sea soldiers. Zoro shouted. Ahead, one by one, the Marines were already approaching the three of them with their guns raised. I found the straw hats, speed up support. The sailors shouted to each other, and soon the large army came. With a cigarette in his mouth, a tall and strong naval officer with a nearly middle-aged face strode here. At a glance, he saw the three of Luffy, and his face immediately turned gloomy. Monkey D. Luffy, you're under arrest. Ha ha ha, no way. The three of Luffy ran forward, knocking down many Marines along the way. Thick white smoke rushed into the air, and the naval officer came towards the three. Sanji dealt with the Navy, Zoro fought with a woman wearing glasses, and Luffy met the Navy officer head-on. Straw Hat Boy, this is where you will end, just grab it. The sea soldier shouted loudly, attacking Luffy. No, ha ha ha, I'm going to the Great Route. Luffy laughed, dodging the officer's white smoke. On the other hand, Zoro pushed the female sea soldier against the wall with a knife, with a complicated expression on his face. Why do you have the exact same face as her? What did you say? Dusky shouted loudly. Sauron, Sanji, you go first, find Usopp and the others, and let them run towards the Mary. Luffy's voice came through. Zoro slammed the knife back, and Dusky was soft. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Fell to the ground, then he took a deep look at the woman behind him and walked towards the distance. The future will be indefinite. You're the only one left, okay. The naval officer was naturally Smog, his face was stern, and the white smoke was coming out of his mouth, and he asked in a low voice. The figure suddenly increased, and he fought with the opponent. After 10 moves, Luffy was detained. It's over, Straw Hat Boy, stay here. The voice was very deep, and Smog was about to start to completely subdue the pirates in his hands. No, I'm going to the Great Channel, let me go. Luffy struggled desperately, but to no avail. But at this moment, the wind suddenly picked up, and a voice wearing a cloak came out. There's no reason to stop a man from running to the sea. Then, Smoker's face changed greatly, and he involuntarily released Luffy's hand. The next moment, Luffy laughed, ran away, and quickly disappeared in front of Smoker's eyes. Who is it? Smog turned abruptly, but saw no figure. On a roof, the face of the man in the cloak was in the shadows and could not be seen clearly. But as he looked in the direction of the sea, his eyes were full of contemplation. The wind is stronger, but the rain has dissipated. Chapter 365 Survive as you wish, Luffy, all kinds of coincidences and ambitions flow with the times, ask the world, and one day we will meet. Muttering this sentence, the robe on the man in the black cloak shook with the gust of wind. His body began to exude a unique momentum, causing everything around him to fluctuate slightly. He looked at the people running in the distance, and his eyes were full of expectations for the new generation. Just let me help you. Go and face the sea, boys. As these words were spit out, gusts of wind rushed out of his body and rolled towards the shore. The group of Straw Hat Boys running on the road were suddenly swept up by the gust of wind and flew towards the shore. After 5 or 6 breaths, the wind stopped, the Straw Hat Boys hit the ground, and when they looked up again, they were not far from the Mary. The leisure time is very good, Long. A clear voice suddenly remembered. Dorig's body trembled, but there was no accident. He turned around and slowly looked behind him. Not beyond his expectations, it really was this man. My son goes to sea, and as a father, I should give him a ride. A deep voice came out. Drago stretched. He took off his hat, revealing a face full of lines. Yang Qing smiled and stared at the face in front of him carefully. Compared with a few years ago, Dorag at this time is undoubtedly much more mature. He seemed more stable and condensed. The first time he met, he was as sharp as a scabbard sword, but this time, he was wrapped in a scabbard, and the light was restrained. Your son, is that the boy with the straw hat? Yang Qing asked with a smile. The two met again, as if they had not seen each other for many years, chatting with each other familiarly. You know, there is more to ask. Drago's face was stern, but he had no interest in chatting. Also, I would like to know why one of the 5 world-famous emperors, the god of death, came here. Is it just to take action against a few juniors who haven't gone to sea yet? Then this surprises me a little. Ha ha ha. Yang Qing laughed, and after a long time he stopped his voice and said interestingly, of course not them. I'm here, more than that, for you. Long. I haven't seen you for many years, are you stronger? I'm looking forward to it. The world's first criminal who is also hailed as a thorn in the eye by the world court. Long, how powerful are you now? I'm very curious. The fighting intent in Yang Qing's eyes was undisguised. At this point, he no longer needed to hide everything. Anything can be said on the table, and it is straightforward, without the slightest sloppiness. Are you specifically for me? There were more doubts in Drago's voice. That's right, I'm just for you, come on, try it, Long, how much has changed after so many years? Yang Qing said loudly. The void behind him suddenly froze and was instantly controlled. Drago's eyes shrank, staring at Yang Qing opposite. You really are stronger, it's terrifying. Why, Long, are you afraid? Yang Qing couldn't help sneering when he saw that the other party didn't even plan to attack. Meaningless battle, Drago said indifferently, turning to leave here. I won't let you go so easily, Drago. Yang Qing laughed and walked over a few steps. Naturally, he would not easily let go of this opportunity to fight against a master. Whitebeard fought against him, and he made great progress. At his realm, it is not easy to find an opponent again. Dorag is one of the reasons for coming here. Fight with the masters, let yourself find your inadequacies again, and continue to improve. After 3 steps, Yang Qing had already reached behind Dorag and slammed a punch. Buzz. The air suddenly compressed, and then formed an air cannon, which was also shot forward as Yang Qing threw a punch. A second later, the punch passed through Dorag's body, and the latter turned into a breeze and dissipated in front of Yang Qing. The air cannon threw out directly and landed on the roof not far away, shattering a brick and causing many screams. Since you insist on doing this, then I'm not welcome. A low voice came from behind Yang Qing. Unconsciously, Dorag's tall body had reached behind him, and a shadow shrouded him. Long Claw. It seems that the space has been caught by Drago's hands at this moment. The air waves are converging, the air is thin, and Yang Qing feels a little suffocated. The power of this claw has not yet been released, but it is only condensed, but it has already been reflected. Buzz. The 30-meter space suddenly shook, and Long's right hand popped out and went straight to Yang Qing's head. There is no doubt that if this claw is firmly grasped, Yang Qing will basically be unable to avoid the end of death. At this critical moment, a smile appeared on Yang Qing's face, a bright smile. It's so good to fight with a master. Fighting intent. The soaring fighting intent emerged from Yang Qing's body. His figure was twisted at this moment, and after a breath, he was already face to face with Drago. The claw that was facing away from him before, now grabbed his face directly. Bang! However, the catch eventually came to a standstill. He was firmly grasped by Yang Qing's right hand, and the residual power of the claw strike was revealed, blowing Yang Qing's black hair, and it was sent out from a distance, and a gust of wind was actually set off. Then, after a short while, the pupils of both of them trembled. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The sound and shadow disappeared almost at the same time, and when it reappeared, it was already 3 meters away, and the two legs slammed together in the air, making a dull thunderous sound. The tiles under their feet, as the two moved around, made a fine sound, and occasionally they were stepped on and cracked. Long, come on, fight. Yang Qing's loud laughter came out, his figure reappeared, already in the air, his right leg suddenly lifted, and then chopped down. Bang! Dorig's face changed, and he raised his hands to block the punch. The position of his legs, a circle of air waves spread out, but it was the residual energy generated by removing the strength of the punch. Immediately afterwards, the two kept disappearing and appearing. Their fighting area was only a mere 20 meters, and they were all on the roof. However, a minute later, the building was still not destroyed, except for some broken tiles. Everything else is still guaranteed to be complete. Wind. With a grim face, Dorag suddenly turned into the wind and disappeared in front of Yang Qing. When it reappeared, it was already standing in the air. Chapter 366 Change. Yang Qing looked up at Drago in the sky with a smile on his face. He was very happy to be able to fight with him. Even in this town of Rogue, the two could not really let go of their hands and fight, but it was enough to be enjoyable. The next moment, Yang Qing's body suddenly rose up and went towards the sky. After 3 breaths, the two faced each other again. The fists are wrapped in jet black armed color domineering, waving each other to attack. Their attacks were as dense as thunderstorms, slanting towards each other. But the two of them are like fish in the water, flexible and elegant, and can easily escape these attacks. The tide of the times has moved. Dorag, have you felt it? While throwing a fist, Yang Qing said loudly. Dorag's face didn't change, his pupils stared at the smiling guy in front of him. You kid, it's really too dangerous. What do you want to do? Ha ha ha, don't worry, I just want to push this wave and make the world a tsunami. A tsunami big enough to spread across the world. Then, when the tsunami recedes and the land emerges again, our world will wake up again. It's an innovation, Dorag. It's like your innovator, overthrowing the old regime and establishing new warrants. What you want to reform is the country and the court. The two fists collided together, causing a gust of wind, and Drago's face became darker and darker with Yang Qing's words. And what I want to reform is the whole sea. With this sentence, Dorig's face changed greatly, and he threw a punch. You lunatic. Do you want to destroy the world? No no no, ha ha ha, of course I won't, it's just a change. I control everything, and when the whole world falls under my control, all changes are natural. Yang Qing laughed and threw out the same punch. Bang! There was a wave of air in the air, and both of them retreated. Then the figures slowly floated down and landed on the roof again, looking at each other. Have you gone crazy, Lucifer? The skyrocketing power has made your desires continue to rise. This time, have you really gone in the direction of evil? Your change will make countless people lose their lives. It's a disaster. In a sense, Drago has already understood what Yongqing is going to do, and only Yongqing can do such crazy things at this moment. This made his heart tremble and he was very worried. Because as he said, if Yongqing really launched this tsunami that was enough to set off the entire sea, the whole world would wake up. But how much of the old things are left? In history, no major change, the replacement of a country, was not faced with a huge disaster. His Drago just launched a coup d'état in the country, which is relatively mild, but listening to the people in front of him, it is clear that he will not be so kind. This guy is too dangerous. In Dorag's heart, the emphasis on Yongqing was raised by several levels. Take him. At this moment, this idea sprouted in his mind. With a sharp look in his eyes, he suddenly started to act, and the power of devil fruit and domineering was instantly merged into one. In order to avoid a huge area of destruction, he condenses all his attacks into a single point. Then, his speed reached a terrifying level, and he silently arrived behind Yongqing. Do you know, Dorag, when I first set foot here and saw the execution platform, the idea of becoming the Pirate King had already sprouted in my heart. But that was too far for me at the time. Yongqing was still talking, with his back to Drago. The next moment, when Drago gathered a variety of forces, and the attack that was so terrifying that it could destroy an island came, Yongqing suddenly turned around. Then he smiled, his eyes full of contempt, and stretched out his hands. Bang! The two collided again, but it overturned the house with the two at the center and a radius of 300 meters. The houses swayed and collapsed, and the people inside fled in panic. The dust was everywhere, and the ground began to sag. The two of them tried their best to restrain themselves, but they still caused such a huge destructive force. And at this moment, when I come here again, my heart is very excited. The will inherited from the times, the steel cast by dreams, and the high mountain in every pirate's heart, that position is within my grasp. I'm the closest to it. Drago's pupils shrank, and said inconceivably, you want to hit the Pirate King. Ha 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 ha. Yongqing burst into laughter, and he stared into Drago's eyes suddenly. Yes, I want to become one piece. I want to stand in the deepest part of this sea, at the apex of every pirate's dream. I want to fulfill my dream. I want to change the world. At this moment, Yongqing can finally say out loud what he wants to do and how to do it. He is no longer the weak person, no longer a child with empty dreams and no strength. At this moment, he stands at the top and peak of the world, invincible, and is the most powerful person in the world. And Dorag, you will be the king of the land. I need your help. Unceremoniously, Yongqing made his own request. I am the king of the sea, you are the king of the land. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Together we can change the world. Drago's pupils continued to shrink, and a storm surged in his heart. He has always dreamed of changing the world, but the more he goes on, the more he discovers how deep the water in this world is. And for so many years, he just stepped on his feet and feet like water, wanting to completely drain the water in the whole world, and then change the water. What a vast, complicated, and difficult process to complete. It will take generations, or even a dozen generations, to hope to accomplish this. The power that has been consolidated for a long time, the right to stand on the top of the world, such a behemoth, if you don't face it in person, it's hard to imagine it's stern and condensed. Even if it has the power to lift mountains, what is the use? What stood in front of him was not a mountain, but a continent that stretched endlessly and boundless. Come on, Dorag, let's join forces, and I will become the king of the sea. You and I will change the world. Isn't that what you wanted? Yongqing's face was full of smiles, and his words were full of fascination and temptation. Just like when he met the other party for the first time, how much will Yongqing's words have a huge impact on Dorag this time? Chapter 367 Rejection. Dorag's face changed continuously, his hands kept on, and Yongqing quickly threw a fist against him. The collision between the two brought a gust of wind and swept up the sky. At this time, the sailors stationed in Rog Town had already discovered the abnormality here and rushed here quickly. There, it's there. There are two people fighting. Those two guys are definitely not ordinary people. Quick, stop them, damn it. Shouting to each other, a large number of Marines began to rush here. The battle between Yongqing and Drago caused a wave of rhetoric. Countless terrified people scrambled and ran around, their eyes full of panic. On the field, the two were still facing each other. You are so crazy, Drago said solemnly. This thought is too dangerous, this is impossible. Impossible. Yongqing laughed. Ha ha ha, I haven't tried anything, how do I know it's impossible? This will be a major breakthrough, and it will be a challenge to the times and the world. Dorag, your heart is definitely not talking like this. You are throbbing and fantasizing. You are a person with desire and ambition. You are destined to be extraordinary. So, join hands with me. In the near future, the world will change because of you and me. This is an earth-shaking change. This is the advance of the times. Dorag listened to Yongqing's words. His eyes were full of light flickering. He was hesitating and doubting, but after 3 breaths, he still shook his head. His eyes were full of determination, and his voice was low and angry. Impossible. I can't join forces with you. I want to do. I will do it, but never think about it. Don't worry, I'm teaming up with you, crazy guy. The powerful force has lost your heart, Lucifer, it's time for you to reflect. Drago's eyes were full of anger. Behind him, the wind was blowing. After a breath, his hands trembled, and the space behind him shook, and an invisible giant began to gradually appear in the void. The huge body is 1,000 meters long, and the body is long and winding, and it emits a roar of the sky. The 4 or 5 air cannons in its mouth are fiercely blasted towards Yongqing. Shish. The sharp voice made the air smell of being burnt. Yongqing laughed, looked up at the sky, standing in the sky, with the kilometer-long Dorag behind him, clenched his fists, and then punched out one after another. Bang bang bang. The air is chaotic, and the wind is blowing. All the air cannons were easily smashed by Yongqing, and his voice came out again. Dorag, it's you who's wrong. The turbid water can only become clear if you pour it all out and replace it with a new one. The world, too. You understand the country, but you don't, pirates, don't understand the world. You think I'm crazy, just because I want to do it, I will do it. I'm a pirate, synonymous with freedom. We are free and unrestrained. Because of this, the world is afraid of us. Drago's face was gloomy, and his eyes were angry. What a bunch of nonsense, too lazy to bother with you. He swept his eyes and looked at the Marines who were running towards here at a rapid pace. The Navy is here, I'm leaving, your stupid idea, it's better to put it out early, it's too stupid, too crazy. Otherwise, it will be difficult for me to control myself and not fight with you. The breeze was blowing, and Drago's figure slowly dissipated, turned into a gust of wind, and quickly went away. Seeing Drago disappear here in a blink of an eye, the smile on Yongqing's face faded and became calm. Drago's rejection was not unexpected, it was normal. All he has to do is to leave a seed in Drago's heart and wait quietly. When the time comes, he will naturally take root and sprout. We'll see you again, Dorag. A ray of light flashed in his eyes, and Yongqing glanced at the incoming Marines behind him. A large number of Marines have surrounded this place in a circle. At this moment, they are slowly advancing forward under the leadership of the leading Marine. Don't move, or you will be killed immediately. You can't do anything about it, don't resist. The loud shouts of the sea soldiers came. Yongqing smiled slightly, and didn't care. He took one step forward, ready to leave here. But at this moment, one of the Marines suddenly pulled the trigger under tension. Bang bang bang. A series of gunshots, accompanied by a strong smell of gunpowder smoke, spread throughout the audience. Seeing this scene, Smoker's face changed immediately. Not good. He suddenly stared at the figure in the field. The guy who can destroy such a large area of the ground like this is definitely not a simple guy. When he came here, he just waited and watched, but the Marines even shot without his order. There were more than 100 Marines present, and the chain reaction started, and the gunshots rang out continuously. After a full 5 or 6 seconds, the gunfire ceased. Every sailor swallowed his saliva and looked at the field nervously. Then, they saw a shocking scene. The bullets, the densely packed bullets were surrounded by a circle, and then stood quietly in the void. It was as if time stood still when the bullet was fired, and then moved 3 inches in front of the man. The bullet was abruptly stopped in midair. Hi! The sound of countless gasping breaths came out, and Smoker even more. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Pupils constrict. This man, his face is so familiar. Smog felt very familiar when he saw Yang Qing's first face, but he didn't remember who it was for a while. Pirate, definitely a pirate. I saw him in the Bounty. Smog didn't pay much attention to the god of death, and only occasionally glanced at it. Even this new emperor's strength is even more terrifying. He has also fought with his pirates, but Smog is more familiar with the 2nd and 3rd tier fighters of the Death Pirates, those tough guys who made him suffer a lot during the battle. Ding 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 ding. A crisp sound came out, and all the bullets fell to the ground. Showing Yang Qing's entire figure, his eyes glanced coldly at the sea soldiers surrounding him. You guys are really a bunch of people who don't know what they are called. One step out, Yang Qing's eyes narrowed suddenly. Om. The domineering aura rose into the sky, instantly radiating in all directions. This is the impact of the will, the coercion of the spirit. The Overlord is domineering. Chapter 368 _ In just an instant, the pirate's present fell to the ground and lost consciousness. Glancing around, it was full of fallen pirates. Yang Qing was expressionless and walked away. He walked out of the encirclement step by step, and 10 seconds later, he came to a figure. Smog's eyes were hazy and his whole body was swaying. In the face of this domineering aura, he couldn't hold on at all. This violent aura instantly impacted his will, making him immediately stunned. At this time, in front of his blurry eyes, he could only see a figure coming to him, but he couldn't see who it was. You, who are you? Smog asked, struggling. Who is it? Yang Qing asked back with a smile, and then stepped over Smaller's side, leaving a voice behind. You'll know. In just a few steps, Yang Qing's figure disappeared. Drago has already left here, so there is no need for him to stay. And Smog insisted on standing for another 3 seconds. After all, he was dizzy, hit the ground heavily, and lost consciousness. That terrifying shock of will is not something he can resist at all. 3 days later, the East China Sea entered the Great Channel next to Upside Down Mountain. A small boat is slowly advancing, with 2 people sitting on it, facing each other. The atmosphere is a bit weird. What are you doing on my ship? Hawkeye Mahawk stared at the guy in front of him, his tone a little cold. Take me a ride, I happen to meet you, take a downwind, don't mind. Yang Qing replied with a smile, placing the wine jar in his hand heavily on the small boat and making a bang. Hawkeye raised his eyes. I haven't agreed yet, you arrogant guy. Ha ha ha, you don't need your consent, Mahawk, I invite you to drink, you should be happy. Yang Qing said with a smile. Then he brought Mahawk over, and threw the 2 large bowls on the deck, whirling, and finally stabilized. Clear wine, which comes out of its own accord, fills 2 large bowls. Hey, I took you for a ride, but it seems like I took advantage of you. Mahawk said with an ugly face. The guy in front of him was as shameless as red hair. Ha ha, don't mind, we two, who is with whom? Yang Qing laughed. I have nothing to do with you, and I don't want to. Hawkeye said with disgust, you'd better leave my ship immediately. Yang Qing just smiled, not paying any attention to Hawkeye's bad attitude. Under the strange atmosphere, the two began to clink glasses frequently. In the end, Hawkeye did not drive Yang Qing away. After several days passed, Hawkeye's sailing speed slowed down a lot. Because of this, on the third day, a sheep-headed pirate ship appeared behind their butts and buttocks. On the sails, a large straw hat skeleton was painted. It was the Straw Hat Pirates, Luffy and his party. I see, it's all you. My ship is a lot slower, and even they didn't get rid of it. Hawkeye frowned. Don't mind. Look at that guy, he looks at you, but he is full of fighting spirit. Yang Qing pointed to the green-haired man at the bow, who was staring at the two people on the boat at the moment. On the Golden Mary, the Straw Hat and his party became completely solemn. In the battle in Rogue Town, the three of Luffy were extremely impressed. That terrifying man was simply crushing all the way, shocking. What's even more terrifying is that this mysterious young man is standing with Mihawk, the world's largest swordsman, at this moment. What exactly is going on? That kid, Zoro, the one with the straw hat, is Luffy, yes, the guy Shanks is concerned about. Yang Qing pointed at the two of them and smiled. Now, they are all weak and pitiful. His voice was not concealed in the slightest, so it clearly entered the ears of the two people on the deck. This guy. Luffy both gritted their teeth. This is naked contempt. The young man didn't care, and the two of them could see clearly. Mihawk just glanced at everyone on the Golden Melly, and then withdrew his gaze. It's boring. At this time, Luffy and the others could not attract the slightest attention from him. As Yang Qing said, they are too weak. Ha. Seeing Hawkeye's appearance, Yang Qing just smiled. Then, Yang Qing shouted to Luffy and the others with a smile on his face, causing the whole boat to rush into anger. Hey, you are so weak, do you really want to go to the Great Route? We'll die, boys. Ha. Although the voice was laughing, Luffy and the others could clearly understand the contempt in it. The first one who was angry was Nami, the orange-haired woman, who shouted loudly. Who the hell are you? You lied to Nuochigao and suddenly appeared here again. Hey, Nami, don't. Usopp covered Nami's mouth in horror and stopped him from continuing. That guy is so scary, even Luffy and the other three are no match. He will kill you. Then, Nami shouted out a half-sentence, and was dragged by Usopp again. Okay, kind. Her words seemed a little vague because her mouth was covered. But Yang Qing could understand it, and couldn't help shaking his head. The smile on his face sank. I didn't deceive Norkagao. Everyone has suffering to suffer, and suffering leads to better things. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. This may be fate, and I will not interfere in anyone's future without authorization. You're still young, so you don't understand. Nami became even more angry, and dragged Usopp away. At this moment, unimaginable power erupted. She walked to the edge of the boat with a few big steps and shouted loudly. I don't care who you are, what is the purpose of hiding in Kokoja village, and immediately disappear from our eyes. Immediately, disappear. Because of Nuoki's height, Nami was surprisingly angry at this moment. She didn't care about Yang Qing's identity at all, and she shouted out loudly. Let Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp be shocked. And what she looked like at the moment made Hawkeye's eyes flash, and she was a little surprised. The little girl is so brave, she will definitely have a future. In his words, there was some gloating, and he glanced at Yang Qing with a clear smile. Luffy laughed. Zoro and Sanji's faces relaxed, only Usopp looked terrified. No matter who the other party is or how powerful they are, at least this moment, they are very cool. Chapter 369 is here. It's really helpless to be scolded. Yang Qing shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, then his face turned gloomy and looked at the Golden Melly. However, you are so daring. In the next second, Yang Qing, who was sitting cross-legged on Mihawk's deck, suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already standing on the deck of the Golden Mary. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers, I can understand, but you are so rude. Lack reverence for the strong. Yang Qing's words were clearly spread throughout the arena. Hawkeye's eyes flashed not far away, and he frowned slightly. Lucifer, what are you going to do? Hee hee, don't worry, I won't shoot at them. Yang Qing turned back and smiled, then looked at Nami with a sigh in her voice. She is indeed a very courageous woman. Just like Nokigao, and like your mother. The blue-haired woman flashed through his mind, and Yang Qing's expression was a bit complicated. How could he not feel Nuachigao's feelings for him? You bastard! Nami ran over and threw a punch. This sturdy scene made Luffy and the three of them on the side immediately change their faces and shouted loudly. Nami, don't. The three of them understand Yang Qing's fear best, so at this moment, they are extremely worried about Nami's safety. However, the next second, they breathed a sigh of relief. The mysterious young man just stretched out his right hand and easily caught Nami's fist. You don't understand, and I can't tell you, so please be quiet. Yang Qing's tone was a little heavy when she released Nami's right hand. Hawkeye crossed Erlang's legs and looked at everyone here with interest. Then, he looked at the group of people present. One by one, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp. He was very familiar with these faces in his previous life, and when he saw the real person at this moment, he really felt a lot of emotion in his heart. Don't worry, here, I won't shoot at you. It's totally unnecessary, I'll take action against you. The figure slowly floated into the air, and Yang Qing flew towards the Hawkeye's boat. Go, run to your dreams, the sea will tell you all the answers, the unknown is the most worthwhile thing to pursue. His voice drifted in the air, and in the shocking eyes of Luffy and the others, the eagle-eyed boat actually flew up and headed towards the other side. The ship, their ship, actually flew. Usopp said in shock, his eyes full of amazement. It's so handsome, a flying ship. Luffy's eyes were full of light, looking at the ship that was getting further and further away, he was very envious. Who is that mysterious guy? At this moment, Nami wanted to know Yang Qing's identity. Zoro was staring at another indifferent figure on the boat, his eyes full of fighting intent. I won't lose again. After half an hour, Hawkeye looked at the person in front of him expressionlessly. I'm going to the Great Waterway. What did you want to do when you brought my ship here? Around the boat, huge sea kings roared and scurried, causing a large splash of water, but they didn't dare to really hit the boat. On the boat, they smelled a terrible smell. Well, I just don't know where to go, don't mind, haha. Yang Qing touched the back of his head and said embarrassedly. Hawkeye was silent, and after a while, he stretched out his right hand, grabbed the handle of the knife, and waved it like an electric light, heading forward. Huh! The blue sword energy erupted. Yang Qing laughed, and quickly avoided the sword. Haha, don't be angry, it's just an accident, and it's good to just look at the scenery, isn't it? The sword energy rushed out, splitting the 4 or 5 sea kings in the back in half, and the scarlet blood dyed the sea red. When Yang Qing saw that Hawkeye was about to draw his sword, his expression changed slightly, and then he said with a smile, I'll go right away, hee hee. Before he could say a word, Yang Qing flew towards the sky, and after 3 breaths, disappeared in front of Eagle Eye. Seeing that Yang Qing disappeared, Hawkeye slowly returned the unsheathed knife. Then he pondered for a moment, and murmured. I asked you to take my ship out. Damn it, how can I get out? It's a windless zone here. Sure enough, it wouldn't be good to meet him. After Yang Qing left Eagle Eye, he headed towards the Great Channel. 2 hours later, he fell from an island, and then the ability to control the fruit radiated out and swept the nearby trees. Crack! After about half a quarter of an hour, a small boat took shape. Yang Qing controlled the boat into the sea. After trying it, a smile appeared on his face. Yes, sailing. Flying out of thin air, speed time and space, but boring. Yang Qing came out, more with a plan to increase his knowledge, improve his strength, and collect devil fruits along the way. Naturally, it will not be just to hurry, and Luffy and the others just happen to meet. Very well, let's slowly reach the Great Channel like this. Said with a smile, Yang Qing was lying on the boat and controlled the boat to walk forward slowly. At this time, Luffy and the others had already rushed up the upside-down mountain, screaming in excitement. They finally took the first step, from the four seas, to the real pirate land, and soon after they entered the Great Channel, Yang Qing's identity was known to them. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Caused a shock to the crowd. At the same time, a group of people arrived in the Drum Kingdom. The leader was tall and had a smile on his face. He looked very cheerful on the surface, but deep in his eyes, it was full of cruelty and gloom. This kingdom, haha, start here. My pals, it's time for my Blackbeard's name to spread. The leading guy was Blackbeard. He escaped from the Whitebeard pirates. At this time, he finally found like-minded partners and started his own pirate career. That's what makes it interesting, Captain. Just destroy the country first. The man holding the automatic rifle said with a smile. Blackbeard's face was full of smiles, and he took the lead, and behind him, the crew followed closely one by one. The entry of several people did not attract anyone's attention. They're weird, but they're not noticeable at the moment. Especially Blackbeard, although he has always been in the Whitebeard pirates, his character makes him very low-key, and outsiders rarely know him. When everyone arrived at a country with a large population in the square, Blackbeard stopped and showed a slightly sinister smile on his face. Just here. Try the power of my dark fruit. Chapter 370 Ice and Fire. Thick darkness flowed out of Blackbeard's hands, and then swept in all directions. In the center of this square, darkness suddenly descended, radiating toward the entire town. This darkness swallows everything. Just like a black hole, even the light is swallowed in. The surrounding members of the Blackbeard pirates all chuckled to avoid the darkness. They don't know the power of this darkness, so they don't dare to touch the covered ground at will, so that everything falls into the power of nothingness. Then, they saw Blackbeard drinking continuously, with a look of pain on his face. The darkness swept the entire town. Everyone was afraid of this unknown darkness, and began to run in panic. They kept running, with fear on their faces. After about 3 minutes, darkness engulfed all the houses in the town. Dark cave. Blackbeard spit out these 3 words. His face was cold and cruel. Such power. The crew of the Blackbeard pirates, watching this scene, said in horror, they were shocked by the power of darkness. The power of the captain is incredible. And Blackbeard was panting, bent over and exhaled. But looking at the scene he created, a wild smile appeared on his face. Ha 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 ha, have you seen it? This is the power of the dark fruit. It's worthy of my hard work and lurking for so long, and I finally got its power. It's so perfect. This kind of power, although it is not the fruit of the natural system, but it is the power nemesis of all the fruits of the natural system. No, it is the nemesis of all fruit power. With it, I will no longer fear any capable ones. Blackbeard laughed. The power of the dark fruit really made him too satisfied. That kind of power is amazing. 3 minutes later, he had a sharp look and shouted loudly. Liberation. It was as if a giant beast hiding in the darkness burped and spit out everything it engulfed. Houses, buildings, sculptures, flowers and trees were once again released from the darkness of nothingness. When they appeared here again, most of the Drum Kingdom was already paralyzed. To become a country full of wreckage and ruins is astounding. This is its power. I'm so satisfied, ha ha ha. Blackbeard raised his head and laughed. Just as he laughed, several figures suddenly appeared in his mind. The man who bore the brunt had black hair, freckles on his face, and flames burning on his body. Then, there was a young figure with an indifferent and cold face. When the young man's figure flashed across his mind, it was a surprise. He couldn't help shivering and shook his head sharply. Then, Blackbeard clenched his teeth, and a look of excitement appeared on his face. With it, I can get my revenge. Ace, I won't let you go. Blackbeard's eyes were full of killing intent, but there was a crazy smile on his face. At this moment, he is like a crazy careerist. The first half of the Great Channel, an island of animals with long bodies. All the animals and plants here are somewhat deformed. They all have tall, long shapes that make them feel weird. It is precisely because of the change of magnetic force that the development of the organism is impressed, and everything here is so weird. And on this island, a black-haired man is standing at the moment, with red beads hanging on his neck and a long sword on his back. His face is solemn and dignified. This person is Ace. He chased Blackbeard from the New World to the first half of the Great Channel. But today, when he arrived at Long Chain Island, he met an unexpected person. "Aoki, why are you here?" Ace said solemnly. On the opposite side, a tall figure stood there, looking lazily, with blindfolds over his eyes, his entire body motionless, as if he was sleeping. Ace's question, Aokiji didn't answer. Maybe he really fell asleep. A hint of doubt flashed in his eyes. Ace pressed the cowboy hat on his head, then, cut, and walked towards Aokiji. Until he walked a foot in front of Chingzi, one of the 3 generals of the sea soldiers. Chingzi with the highest combat power still did not change at all, as if he had really fallen asleep. It made Ace even more puzzled. This guy really dared to fall asleep here with such confidence. Boring. Shaking his head, Ace stepped over Aokiji's side. I thought that there would be another battle, but I didn't expect him to think too much. However, just after Ace took 3 steps, a long yawn came from behind, causing Ace to stop immediately. It's really not the right time to wake up. Ace narrowed his eyes, and the momentum on his body became solemn. The King of Ice awakens, and no one dares to underestimate it. The captain of the 2nd Division of the Death God Pirates, Fire Fist Ace. The big pirate with a bounty of 530 million Bailey, why are you here? Sleepy, asked lazily. His tone was slow, languid, and indifferent. It has nothing to do with you. Ace said seriously, I still have something to do, so I won't disturb your sleep. After saying that, Ace turned to leave. But at this moment, Aokiji's voice came again, making Ace's eyes show a hint of war. The sea soldiers didn't let go of the pirates so easily. Chingzi's voice was also a little serious. The captain of the 2nd Division under the dignified 4 emperors, I can't pretend that I haven't seen it. What's more, the attributes of you and me. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. But the absolute opposite. Ace turned around abruptly, flames burning in his eyes, flames blazing around his body, and his eyes were sharp. If that's the case, then try it. Ice and fire, who is stronger? I wanted to learn the 3 generals of the Navy for a long time. The highest combat power is amazing. The battle in the New World, the Death God Pirates, has never been forgotten. The voice was indifferent and calm, but the pressure in it made Aokiji's face suddenly serious. Chapter 371 The Most Mysterious. The faint pressure, along with the release of the domineering arrogance, made the entire Long Chain Island enter a very tense atmosphere. Ace's tyrannical aura, although there is no white beard, Yang Qing's realm is overwhelming, but also has that invincible aura, which can shock everything. At the moment of the impact, Aokiji's face changed and his eyes became solemn. Aokiji didn't have much contact with Ace. More, he is through the intelligence of the Ministry of Coast Guard. A natural type with the ability to burn fruit, young, promising, captain of the 2nd Division of the Death Pirates. This young man, his high bounty and status, in his opinion, is more because of his captain status. But at this moment, when Chingzi faced it in person, he knew deeply that he was wrong. It was very wrong. The guy in front of him already had the capital to fight against him. The Death God Pirates are really a terrifying team. Aokiji's eyes were a little complicated as he murmured. He still remembered how frightened this little pirate ship was when he attacked for the first time. But after few encounters, the other party has made rapid progress, and although he has made progress, it is far less terrifying than the other party. At this time, the captain of the first team of the other pirate ship has been able to fight against him. Chingzi, since you blocked me, then I'm welcome. Ace's face was solemn, and his tone was full of domineering and fierce. Above his body, the flames burst into flames, and the high temperature distorted the air. On the opposite side, Qingzi's expression changed, and cold air burst out from his whole body, and a large amount of coldness rushed towards all directions. This cold air touched Ace's flame, which also lowered its temperature a lot. Two people are fire, one is ice, and they are born to resist each other. At this moment, a battle is inevitable. Fire fist. With a roar, the flames on Ace burned again, the high temperature surging, just like Ace, full of passion and anger. The huge fist immediately fell from the sky and rushed towards the green pheasant. Ice thorns. With the sound of clicking, a large piece of ice-shaped spikes appeared on the ground. It collided with the fire fist, burning layers of white mist and water vapor, making a chi-chi sound. When Ace saw this scene, his face became even more solemn. Sure enough, it is the power of mutual restraint, which is difficult to deal with. He touched his fists, and an angry giant dragon appeared behind him, flapping his wings and roaring. Ow! Fire long breath. A huge star map appeared in his mouth. During the rotation, a hot flame spit out from Ace's mouth, and the temperature was dozens of times that of ordinary flames. In an instant, the space was distorted by burning. Aokiji felt the high temperature so close at hand, his face changed greatly, his right hand was covered with a domineering dark-armed color, and then he greeted the terrifying flame with a white chill. Ice Age. Circles of white waves rushed towards the surroundings, and the ground and the sea were frozen into ice sculptures. The trees and tall animals on the long chain island fell into stillness at this moment and entered the world of ice and snow. In addition, the power of this ice also covered the entire sea surface. The sea was frozen, and the limit could not be seen at a glance. Almost instantly, Ace's eyes have become a world of frost. Around the flame, it was wrapped in frost, the white mist was constantly transpiring, the ice was liquefied, and then it was vaporized. This terrifying speed made Aokiji's eyes flash, and his estimate of Ace continued to increase. The Overlord is domineering, the degree of development of the terrifying fruit, and the natural fruit, these major points are combined. This kid is really scary. At this moment, Ace slammed his fists, and a loud shout came out again. Ow! Fist of Fire Long. A huge array appeared in the air, and the dragon claws of flames appeared in the array, and attacked the green pheasant fiercely. The accompanying high temperature and power make Aokiji not dare to take it hard. His eyes were dignified, his right hand stretched out, and the ice blue spear quickly emerged. The spear continued to grow thicker. At first, it was only 3 meters long, but after a breath, it was already 100 meters, 5 or 6 meters thick. Then the spear collided with the long claws. Around the center of the two, the ice cubes cracked, the air twisted, and there was a rumbling sound. In the sky, the dragon claws and the spear touched each other, and after a bang, the chi-chi-chi sounded continuously, the white mist continued to evaporate, and the spear and the flame dragon claws offset each other. After about 5 seconds, there was a shock in the air, the expressions of the two changed, and at the same time, they withdrew their right hands. Scary guy. At the same moment, these words appeared in their hearts. At this moment, the two confronted each other and no longer attacked rashly. Their eyes were fixed on each other, their eyes sharp. And just when they were fighting, Luffy and others had entered the first half of the Great Channel and came to the site with Crocodile. Here, they see the mysterious Robin. Robin, who appeared for the first time, with a smile in his eyes, was very curious to pay attention to everyone in this pirate group. Is this guy with the straw hat Luffy? Ace's younger brother. It's really funny. Robin looked at Luffy, full of smiles. In the face of Robin, the Princess of Alabasta, Vivi, was horrified. Don't worry about me, little princess, I have no interest in your plans or what you want to do. Robin said with a smile, but made Princess Weiwei even more nervous. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Jong. Who the hell are you? Sanji, Zoro, were subdued by Robin's fruit ability almost instantly, making Luffy's face extremely solemn. Who am I? He, you'll know, there will be a date, interesting boy. Robin turned to leave, jumped off the Mary, and jumped into his own boat. That woman. It's Crocodile's partner, the most mysterious guy in the studio, Wei Wei said with a look of horror. Is she great? Luffy asked stupidly. She, Wei Wei said for a long time, but she couldn't tell whether the woman was serious or not, because the most mysterious thing in her work was this woman, and almost no one knew her ability and identity. Haha, it's decided, we'll go to Alabasta, Luffy said with a big laugh. The Straw Hat Pirates were greatly surprised, and Usopp lay directly on the deck, his face full of fear. Chapter 372 What Kind of Warrior? Hey, Luffy, did you make a mistake? That's Shichibukai. Nami growled. Ha, just went there, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Luffy laughed, almost falling apart after being shaken by Nami, but he didn't change his mind. The sheep's head boat pierced the sea and headed for Alabasta. On Long Chain Island, the battle between Ace and Aokiji has reached the sea. The 100-meter radius of the Long Chain Island near the coast was burned in a mess, and then covered with dense ice slag, which became horrible to see. The battle between the two was a sea of fire on one side and a biting cold wind on the other side. Both looked cold and stern, and their eyes were full of solemnity and caution. The battle continued, and a day passed in a blink of an eye. The next day, when the two started fighting again, the phone bug in Ace's arms suddenly rang. Blue. Ace frowned, but eventually retreated, glanced at Aokiji, and answered the phone bug. Hello. Hey, Captain, there are traces of Blackbeard. They appeared on Drum Island and destroyed the Drum Kingdom. A voice came from the phone bug, which made Ace look sharp. The purpose of his trip was Blackbeard. You just said them. Ace was keenly aware of this. Yes, Blackbeard found a team of partners and established the Blackbeard Pirates. This name seems to be aimed at Whitebeard. He is really an arrogant guy. Also, Captain, you should go. Near the Long Chain Island, there are already sailors. 4 warships, 4 lieutenant generals. You have already attracted the attention of the sailors, so hurry up and run, ha. The gloating voice of the phone bug caused a black line to appear on Ace's head. Helplessly glanced at the green pheasant opposite, then hung up the phone bug. It seems that I can't fight you anymore, I still have important things. There will be a period later, Aokiji. Withdrawing the flames on his body, Ace pressed the cowboy hat on his head, spewing flames from his feet, soaring into the sky, and disappeared in front of Aokiji in a blink of an eye. Looking blankly at Ace who said to leave, Aoji shook his head, feeling a little depressed. I can't stop it, it's really distressing. It's really troublesome for the death gods to change their minds like this. After standing in place and thinking for a while, Aokiji turned his head and entered the Long Chain Island, then found his somewhat damaged, but barely able to ride bicycle, and pedaled it. Alas, I have to change my bike again. If I knew it earlier, I wouldn't have to fight that kid. It's really troublesome. His face was full of charred black, and the green pheasant looked a little embarrassed, riding a bicycle, crunching, and slowly away from the sea. On an island in the first half of the Great Waterway, the flames within the island burned into the sky, and the sound of explosions continued to be heard. The panicked refugees fled everywhere, with vicious pirates grinning and chasing behind them, wielding machetes, and knocking down villagers one by one. Ha, we got the news, it's here, there are devil fruits here. Hurry up or hand over this island, ha. The threatening voices of the pirates spread far and far, and the villagers on the island had unyielding but frightened expressions on their faces. Set fire, keep burning, it's not enough, the fire isn't big enough. How can we hold a banquet at night with such a small flame? Wearing a captain's hat, a short, fat pirate, roared loudly. The pirates behind him roared loudly, threw oil barrels into the house, and then lit it, with crazy and bloodthirsty smiles on their faces. In the face of blood and war, Human beings will always expose the ferocious attributes that came from ancient times as animals. Villagers howled in pain, heartbroken, their homes, their loved ones, at this moment mortally threatened. Better, hand over the devil fruit obediently, otherwise, I really can't control myself, the desire to destroy. The pirate group is just a very common one. There are countless pirate groups pouring into the Great Waterway from the four seas every year. In terms of overall strength, this pirate group is far behind the Straw Hat Pirates. But when it comes to the ability to do evil, it is also a lot higher than Luffy and others. While the center of the island was very lively and shouting, a small wooden boat quietly approached the harbor here. Then, a tall and thin figure jumped down from it. Has it started? Devil fruit, I really am not the only one who wants it. The thin young figure murmured while looking at the flames on the island. In the center of the island, the villagers were leaning against each other, surrounded by pirates, their faces were full of horror. Mom, I'm afraid. In the crowd, a little girl hidden behind the people looked at the pirates walking towards them fearfully. Lily, don't be afraid, you are the child of the bravest sea warrior, don't be afraid. The woman beside the little girl encouraged. The woman who spoke, facing the pirates, did not have the look of fear in other people's eyes, on the contrary, full of courage. However, I'm still afraid that they are too bad, Lily said, trembling and trembling. Relax, don't be afraid when Mom is here. The woman took Lily's hand and took Lily into her arms. I heard that my father is also a pirate. Is he so bad? Lily asked her mother suddenly while she was afraid. The woman was startled, then looked at Lily with a smile. Your father is the bravest sea warrior, not such a scumbag. Pirates are the freest warriors, but that's not the case. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Guy. Well, I also believe that my father is not such a bad person. Lily said happily, but in her heart, she still could not imagine what kind of warrior her father was. Chapter 373. There are 3 reasons. Trust me, my life is pretty good. However, I'm not sure if she will survive. The disgusting and threatening words made the villagers' faces change immediately, and they cursed at the beasts. The chunky pirate took a few steps to the woman's side, with a grin and excitement on his face. Life on the sea is dull and tedious, so he was a little happy to be able to encounter such a stream of beauty here. So, he wants to be happier. The woman was dragged by 2 pirates. Her face was full of anger, but she was not afraid. Scum, she spat fiercely at the chunky pirate. This mouthful was directly spit on the face of the chunky pirate, which made him stunned for a moment, and then he wiped it with his hands, and his expression changed to a hideous speed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bitch. He raised his right hand high, opened his palm, and was about to pull it out. Suddenly, the wind picked up, and the leaves on the ground were rolled up. Then it trembled suddenly and shattered into countless petals. A domineering, terrifying aura that the pirates had never experienced swept over them. This breath did not directly knock them to the ground, but it caused fear in their hearts, and they dared not even move. The chubby man's hand trembled, but the open palm didn't draw it down. The surrounding villagers, however, had no effect. They stared blankly towards the shore. There, the breeze gradually rose, and a figure came from far to near. He was not walking fast, but very slowly, step by step. But every step, the sound of stepping on the sand, like a percussion music, hit everyone's heart heavily. It makes people feel uncomfortable, neither up nor down. This is a step that stimulates the flow of human blood, and it is even more bizarre with the shocking breath. That person, who is that? At this moment, doubts appeared in everyone's eyes. The clothes were fluttering, and the person who came was passing a long-distance runner in plain color, with a faint smile on his face, showing endless majesty, and behind him was a black package, which appeared to be a long strip. His body, from top to bottom, revealed a mysterious atmosphere from the inside to the outside, which should not be underestimated. Mysterious people, mysterious heroes. Yes, hero, because just as he was walking, he spoke lightly. You who shot against ladies, young children and old people are scumbags. There was a chill in the words, and the domineering aura suddenly intensified. In an instant, the short and fat man trembled all over, fear surfaced on his face, and the pirate with weak willpower fell to the ground with a soft body. At this time, the woman also saw that something was wrong here. She broke free from the two pirates, then ran to her daughter and hugged Lily tightly. "Mom, is he a brave fighter?" Lily didn't have the fear just now, but pointed at the young figure and asked excitedly in her eyes. The woman was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at the man who had walked in front of her. With a young face, a thin body, and a smile on his face, he has a sense of nobility of a gentleman. Just as the woman looked at the man, the young man also looked at her, and the two stared at each other, stunned at the same time. "Woman, you are very brave." Yang Qing's words seemed to be very old, although he was very young, which made the woman look strange. "You were praised by a young brother." Just when she was stunned, Yang Qing had already looked at the chubby man, her eyes turned cold in an instant, and murderous intent rose to the sky. "You were wrong at 3 o'clock. First, your nature is vicious, greedy, there is no bottom line, and the evil is pure. Ashamed of the identity of a pirate, you have no bottom line, and you have lost the way of a pirate. Secondly, you can't tell the situation clearly. You are so weak and dare to break into the first half of the Great Waterway. You can call yourself a dead end. The third and most important point, how dare you rob me of the devil fruit? You have the guts to take what I like." Yang Qing said one sentence at a time, causing more and more sweat on the short and fat man's face. After the third sentence was finished, the short and fat man didn't even know what he was afraid of. His knees went soft and he fell to the ground. "Brow, spare me." He didn't know how powerful the person in front of him was, or who he was, but the momentum that shrouded his head all the time at that time was like a sword hanging above his head, causing the hairs on his whole body to stand upright. It seemed that the next moment, he would be strangled to death by this man. This kind of feeling is very clear, it is killing intent, a killing intent that is so majestic that the short and fat man has never seen it before. "Die." Without any hesitation, Yang Qing's hands trembled slightly. The strange power came out of the body, swept the void in front, and then went in all directions, landing on every pirate. Next, something that terrified everyone present happened. "Me, what's wrong with me?" The short and fat man shouted in fear. He actually found that he couldn't control his body, and he glanced around and found that his crew members were also like this, looking at himself in panic. With others, I have absolutely no idea what's going on. His hand slowly touched the pistol on his waist, and then he raised it with trembling. At the same time, the other pirates either pulled out the weapons around their waists, or drew them out, and then aimed them at their necks. There were even those without weapons, who put their hands on their necks and pinched them hard. The scene was so strange, as if a ghost had descended, it made one's heart feel cold. "Death." Yang Qing spit out a word expressionlessly. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The chunky man then pointed the pistol at his temple. He was so frightened that his face turned white, his lower body was full of sullenness and smell, and his trousers shrank a lot. And other pirates even cried out. "Help, help, I don't dare anymore. Mom, help me, I want to go home." But no use at all. The sound of the trigger being pulled rang out, and the icy blade and hands slammed towards their necks. The next moment, a cruel and cold voice came out. The villagers looked at this scene with fear, the cowardly had closed their eyes, and the woman covered Lily's eyes to prevent her from seeing this scene. Bang! The smell of gunpowder came out, the gunshots were loud, and then, a series of poo-poo sounds came out. When the villagers opened their eyes again, the pirates who were still alive and ferocious before were all terrified. Chapter 374 Mounts. After swallowing saliva, no one dared to speak. The villagers fell into an eerie silence without any threat. Lily was trembling with fright, and the woman hugged her tightly, staring at Yang Qing vigilantly. In the face of this kind of guy who brutally kills other people, they really can't be relieved. Everyone seemed to be stabbed by a long sword in their hearts, and they were extremely nervous. But just when they were nervous alone, Yang Qing spoke with a smile on his face. "Hello, I'm a pirate." The first sentence made the villagers look horrified, and they couldn't help but take a few steps back, causing the crowd to panic. However, the second sentence came out immediately. "But don't worry, I'm not such a scumbag." Yang Qing smiled and glanced at the chubby man under his feet, with a hint of disdain in his eyes. "Give me the devil fruit and I'll leave. If you don't give it." His face suddenly darkened, and his gloomy eyes suddenly enveloped the crowd. He didn't speak, but the villagers immediately understood what he meant. The villagers witnessed Yang Qing's cruel actions with their own eyes, and they already had a clear position and judgment about him in their hearts. This is a cruel, powerful, mysterious figure. No one knows what he will do if he doesn't do what he says. He has more powerful power. If he runs wild, I am afraid that there will be rivers of blood here. "Evil, evil, the devil fruit is not here with us." An old man said tremblingly, "The legend you heard should only be that the devil fruit is on this island, but he was actually robbed by the monster on the top of the mountain." "Gone." "Monster." Yang Qing was taken aback. Why did another monster suddenly appear? "You mean the devil fruit is on the top of the mountain?" Yang Qing asked in a deep voice, looking up at the towering mountain on the other side of the island. "Yes, the devil fruit was originally picked up by Lily at the sea, but when she brought it back to the village, a monster suddenly rushed out from the top of the mountain and took the devil fruit away." The old man nodded. Yang Qing carefully observed the old man's eyes and felt a little strange after confirming that he was not lying. Looking at the towering mountain, he was a little puzzled. There are monsters on this island. I have to say that the monster in the old man's mouth aroused his interest. In this world, what monster is better than Kaido or a character like Whitebeard? Interesting. With a smile, Yang Qing stepped forward and quickly disappeared in front of everyone. It wasn't until Yang Qing left that people breathed a sigh of relief. "How to deal with these pirates?" someone asked suspiciously. "Throw them all into the sea, these hateful guys." The villagers gritted their teeth, disgusting the pirates. Then, people moved their hands, and soon these dead pirates were cleaned up. Lily stared blankly at Yang Qing who had disappeared before her eyes, and asked her mother suspiciously. "Mom, is he a warrior of the sea like Papa?" "Huh." The woman was stunned, not knowing how to answer her daughter for a while. "Although he looks ferocious, there is no malicious intent in his eyes. Lily can see it." Lily nodded. "Also, he saved my mother. He must be the bravest warrior in the sea, right, just like Papa." After recalling Yang Qing's Yang Qing in the woman's mind, she finally smiled and touched her daughter's head. "Lily is right, he is a brave warrior on the sea." "So where did he go?" The woman was silent and looked up at the mountain range in the island. "He should go there. In the mountain forest, lush green plants are densely covered, and cuckoos are chirping in a deep voice, like an old man." Yang Qing walked slowly to the top of the mountain, and the domineering look spread out, including the entire mountain. After 3 breaths, a smile appeared in his eyes. He has already felt where the so-called monster is. In the depths of the forest, there is a deep cave, and the monster is in it. The devil fruit was arched under him by the monster as a treasure. Half an hour later, Yang Qing came to the entrance of the cave. "It's here, the so-called monster." Stepping in, 5 minutes later, Yang Qing saw the true face of the monster, and his eyes showed a touch of surprise. This is the dragon. Antlers, head turn, donkey mouth, rabbit eyes, elephant ears, fish scales, chicken feet. This is clearly a living dragon, more than 100 meters long, entrenched there, eyes closed, as if resting. His voice was like thunder, and his breath was like wind, causing the air in the entire cave to rise and fall like a heart, shaking unceasingly. Yang Qing was somewhat amazed. After carefully observing the dragon, he finally determined that this was the real dragon. In the original book, Luffy and others have encountered the Millennium Dragon, but the dragon in front of them is still different from the Millennium Dragon. First of all, he is more like Kyushu Guolong, and secondly, his age is obviously not 1,000 years. There was no old, turbid air in his breath. When living beings are old and old, their organs will also age. Qi is generated from the heart, and the breath will be disordered. Second, there will even be a stench. And this dragon, he is clearly very healthy, his whole body is very strong, and he has a strong sense of strength. This dragon treats the devil fruit as a treasure. Yang Qing understood that the legendary Long had the habit of collecting treasures, and this dragon was clearly the same. With a trembling of his hand, the devil fruit under the dragon flew up and entered his hand. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Enough is enough, it can be exchanged for imperial swordsmanship. Yang Qing nodded with satisfaction. Before he ran around, he also looked for some devil fruits. At this moment, he got the devil fruits and finally got them together. Woo! The wind was thundering, and the airflow in the cave suddenly surged. The next moment, the sturdy real dragon in front of Yang Qing suddenly trembled and opened his eyes. At this moment, Yang Qing finally understands what it means to produce light in a virtual room. The moment the dragon opened his eyes, the originally dim, dark cave turned brighter. Then, a great majesty swept here. Yang Qing knew that this was dragon power. Compared with humans, dragons were born at the top of the biological chain. They are born with majesty, more terrifying than the domineering of the king. The void began to twist, and everything shuddered under Longwei. Fun. Looking at this dragon, Yang Qing suddenly laughed. It's decided, you will be my mount from now on. Chapter 375 Subduing the Dragon. The dragon's eyes slowly opened, and as the eyes opened and closed, the air became thicker. This is the real dragon, not the attack majesty produced by imitating the shape of the dragon with all skills, but the real dragon might. Incomparably terrifying, Yang Qing felt the pressure almost instantly. With his strength, he can still feel the pressure under the willpower, which is incredible. Ow! When the real dragon saw Yang Qing, he let out a roar, and the wind was blowing, and the dust on the ground was blown up. The black hair on Yang Qing's head flew towards the back following the surging airflow. This long moan made the whole cave suffocate. Yang Qing could even feel the endless majesty and terror in it. Even, the airflow pushed his body to the back. It's really good coercion. Yang Qing laughed loudly, but this is enough. Come and be my mount. With a loud shout, Yang Qing stretched out his hands, the space suddenly trembled, and the surging airflow stopped. The power of Kongkong fruit swept out, completely covering the true dragon. Almost instantly, the real dragon was fixed in front of Yang Qing. Roar! After 3 breaths, with a roar, the cave trembled with air currents, and the dust rustled down. There was a click sound in the space, and the real dragon's body suddenly moved. Almost in an instant, his huge dragon head was already in front of Yang Qing, and the blood basin opened its mouth and bit down suddenly. The huge bite force told the moving body that almost at the same time, it had already surrounded Yang Qing's surrounding space and encircled it at the center. Like a snake, the real dragon is coiled into a dragon formation with a dragon head at the center. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, his hands propped up, he forced the dragon's mouth open and grabbed its teeth. Ow! The real dragon let out a sky-shattering roar, extremely angry, and clenched hard. What a great strength! Yang Qing's face was solemn, and blue-purple scales appeared on his arms, and the unicorn's arms came out. The strength doubled, and he worked hard to open the big mouth of the real dragon. Ha! Shen Sheng shouted loudly, and a huge force burst out from Yang Qing's body, and spread to Junlong's body along his arm. Then I heard a long groan from this big dragon, and the whole body was turned over by Yang Qing. Then, it slammed down to the ground with a bang, and cracks appeared on the ground. Yang Qing laughed and stood up. The next moment, he rode directly on the head of the real dragon. Roar! The real dragon roared angrily and kept shaking his head, trying to throw Yang Qing out. Dragons are of noble birth, and they will never allow a human to ride on their head. Get off, human, roar. The real dragon spit out human words and roared constantly. But Yongqing just laughed. His laughter shook the sky, and then he raised his fist and slammed it down. Bang! The huge dragon head swayed violently, and it was a little stuffy being hit by Yongqing's fist. Be my mount. Yongqing shouted loudly. Roar! Don't think about it, human being, I am a noble real dragon. The real dragon roared, and the huge body flowed and began to go out of the cave. Ha 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 ha. Yongqing let out a series of long howls and stood between the two horns of the real dragon, smiling very happily. Where are you going? You can't get rid of me no matter where you go, just give up. After 10 breaths, the long dragon body emerged from the cave and meandered towards the sky. This monster-like figure immediately appeared in the eyes of the villagers on the island. It caused the villagers to be amazed, staring at the long body and constantly discussing. Mom, look, there is someone on that monster, it's that big brother. Lily pointed to the sky suddenly and said loudly. The woman froze for a moment, then her eyes narrowed. Lily was right, between the two corners of the monster was the young man. At this moment, with a smile on his face, he seemed to be grabbing the horns of the monster crazily, and kept laughing. Soon, Junlong rushed to the sea with Yongqing. Drown you! The real dragon roared and plunged headlong into the sea. Yongqing laughed and waved his right hand. Pediatrics, it's useless. The sea water was completely isolated by him, and the real dragon roared again and again. Seeing it was useless, it stirred the sea, and then rushed out of the sea, driving a series of water droplets. After it rushed out of the sea water in a radius of 300 meters moved. It gathered into a water column like a dragon and attacked the second district towards Yongqing. But the result is obvious, still useless. The real dragon is very angry. This little guy on his head is really difficult to deal with. Get off, human, or I won't spare you. Ha ha, be my mount. Yongqing just laughed, ignoring the threat of the real dragon, and even raised his fist and punched the real dragon, staggering several times in the air, and almost fell. True Dragon's heart also twitched. This human's fist really hurts too much. One person and one dragon were swimming in the sky, and the real dragon continued to take Yongqing into the sea and hit the mountains, but it was useless. In a blink of an eye, a week has passed. After such a long time, the real dragon was already exhausted. Flying in the air and various attacks consumed his physical strength. At this moment, his physical strength was finally exhausted. Get off, human. At this moment, the real dragon's voice is a little weak. Be my mount, I'm better than you. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Big, you should surrender to me. Yongqing said loudly, with a domineering look in his voice. Shocked, the domineering aura swept towards the real dragon, causing the latter to tremble. Shock and wonder appeared in his pupils, and then he slammed into the ground below. Boom! The long body fell directly on the island, startling a cloud of dust. Submit to me. Yongqing raised his fist, struck while the iron was hot, and struck down suddenly. Bang! The ground was shaken, smoke and dust were everywhere, and cracks appeared. And the real dragon is even more painful and screaming in pain. His body is constantly tossing, hitting the ground. Submit. Bang! With another punch, the tears of Junlong pain came out, and there were obvious bruises on his head. Yongqing was punching like this, and the sound made the whole island tremble. I have to say that the real dragon's body is really unbelievable. Yongqing was not seriously injured even though Yongqing was hit like this. Ow, human, I'm fighting with you. The real dragon has a great temper, and with a roar, a gust of wind surged beside him, and after a breath, thousands of wind blades formed, surrounded Yongqing and swept away. Shish! The wind blade splits the air, which is terrifying. But in the face of this, Yongqing just smiled and punched. Buzz! Everything was calm, and a flash of despair flashed in Junlong's eyes. This inexplicable guy is too powerful. Chapter 376 The huge dragon body swayed recklessly, and the blue body showed the color of plants, which looked extremely beautiful. The real dragon's body is extremely tough, it roars again and again, and under the threat of Yang-Qing, it still does not give in. Naturally noble dragons are not easily surrendered. Yang-Qing punched, and the real dragon became weaker and weaker. Ow, you damn human! The real dragon shouted weakly, his claws constantly struggling. Under the tossing of the two of them, the dust in the sky turned the sky into a smog. Ha ha ha, surrender now, you are not my opponent. Yang-Qing shouted loudly, full of smiles. If you don't accept it, I will beat you to accept it. Roar. A trace of fear flashed in Junlong's eyes, he was really scared by Yang-Qing's beating. That little fist, and even Yang-Qing's entire body, was as small as an ant in his eyes, but it was like that. The punch hit him, and the punch spread out, but it caused his whole body to oscillate, and then severe pain swept through his body. This is too terrifying, a small human being can actually threaten himself. No, it is not just a threat to himself, but can really defeat and even kill himself. Submit. I'm running out of patience. If I don't surrender, I will choose to destroy you. The smile on Yang-Qing's face gradually disappeared, becoming gloomy and cold, and the killing intent rushed out of the sky. The ability to control the fruit instantly controlled the radius, and the dust floating in the sky suddenly shrank, condensed into a dark ball, and then fell heavily on the ground. Bang! This punch was hit again, and the real dragon let out a roaring roar that was extremely painful. There was blood in his mouth, and the blood was purple, a bloodline completely different from that of humans. According to legend, the 1,000-year-old dragon is very rare and has incredible abilities, and the real dragon is the real auspicious treasure. Yang-Qing didn't know what special effect his blood would have. I will punch you 10 times. If you don't surrender with the last punch, I will choose to beat you to death. After you die, your whole body is full of treasures, long bones can be used as swords, long blood is good for improving physical fitness, and dragon meat is edible, I think it must taste good. Yang-Qing's voice was indifferent, but the words made Junlong tremble and tremble. This abominable human even wants to eat himself, he would rather die than be eaten, and become the lingering fragrance of others' mouths. Bang! With another punch, the severe pain made the real dragon struggle, but there was nothing he could do. He began to hesitate, surrender. 10,000 of him are unwilling to surrender to human beings, but if he does not surrender, that guy will definitely kill himself and then eat it. This is something he firmly cannot tolerate. He can prove his ambition with death and prove the nobility of the dragon family, but he cannot face up to his being eaten by other people's things. Because he is the top of the food chain, and he is countless times more noble than humans. Damn, human! Yang-Qing counted a few times, and his fists attacked again and again. Bang, 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 bang. With 7 punches in a row, Junlong's whole body lay softly on the ground. His eyes flickered constantly, and cold sweat appeared from his forehead between his horns. To surrender or not to surrender? This question has been backed up countless times in Junlong's mind. He was not reconciled, but there was no way. 3. Like the voice of the god of death, Yang-Qing was extremely indifferent. If the real dragon does not surrender, he will really kill the dragon. 2. At the last second, the real dragon's pupils contracted violently. Damn it, this dragon has a long lifespan, so why not surrender to you for decades? It's better than being eaten. Junlong's eyes changed, and finally he shouted. Humans stop, Benlong surrenders. A smile appeared on Yang-Qing's face, then withdrew his fist and touched Junlong's head, causing the latter to tremble violently. Yes, this last punch, if you don't speak, I will definitely kill you. The meaning of the laughter made Junlong tremble, and he was a little scared. If you die, there really is nothing left. In several of his nests, there are still treasures hidden. How many days will it take to recover? I want you to take me for a good swim on this sea. Yang-Qing asked, very happy in his eyes. Riding a dragon is a scene I dreamed of many times in my previous life. Finally, here it is, and it's fantastic. It only takes an hour. This dragon is not your fragile human beings. Junlong said proudly. With a grin, Yangqing shook his head. You will be called Taizu in the future. Before Junlong refused, he stretched out his hand, a quaint horn with old lines on it. Also, when you hear the sound of the horn, you must come over. This horn is called the Iron Pillar Horn. Do you understand? The voice was clear and fast. However, the real dragon roared angrily. Damn it, human, don't go too far. This dragon has a name, and this dragon is called Izura. Don't mess around and change my name. In addition, this dragon is not a human pet. This dragon is a noble family of real dragons. It is 1,000 times more tyrannical than the pseudo-dragon that can only live for 1,000 years. This dragon can live for 10,000 years, you know. You want to call me with a horn, do you think of Benlong as a human dog? An angry Izura roared. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. The torso swayed, bringing the air into ripples. Long prestige exudes arrogantly, making the whole sea area still. Yangqing was expressionless, raised his head slowly, stared at Junlong's pupils, and then spoke indifferently. I don't care what your name is. From now on, you will be called Taizu. And this horn is the prop to summon you. I put your dragon blood into this horn. No matter how far away you are, you can hear the sound of the horn and distinguish its location. I'm not telling you this to make you object. If you don't agree, I'll kill you. Arrogant, so unreasonable, Yangqing was really unreasonable in the face of this real dragon, and used strong suppression to make Izura feel a stomachache, but there was nothing he could do. Roar. With a roar in the sky, the dragon breath spit out, and the hot flames melted the sand. Izura, no, Tizu was furious. But there was no other way, so he turned his head to the side and didn't look at this hateful human being. An hour later, Taiju's injuries have all recovered. Such self-healing ability surprised Yangqing. As expected of the dragon clan, it's incredibly powerful. In the pirate world, there have always been legends about dragons. Izura is one of them. Chapter 377 Stealing Things. Of course, true dragons like Izura are extremely rare. Even in an era, it is impossible to have one end. It is a great luck that Yangqing can meet. According to legends since ancient times, real dragons have the power to increase luck. Yangqing met the real dragon and conquered it, which was also a great help for his future. Next, Yangqing took a step and stood between the two corners of the iron pillar. Whoosh! With a dragon roar, Taizu seemed to be venting his dissatisfaction, roaring extremely loudly, causing the birds in the entire island to fly away in fear. The long cyan dragon body roamed in the void, winding up, and its speed was unbelievable. Clouds follow dragons, winds follow tigers, dragons who control the sky by nature, the sky to them is like the sea to the fish. Walking through clouds and raining, for the dragon family, it is like an instinct. Where are you going? Half an hour later, Yangqing looked at Taizu strangely and asked. I'm going to my house and get my baby. Taizu said in a muffled voice. He had temporarily succumbed. Anyway, the life of a human being is only a short 100 years, and for his long life, it is just a time to take a nap. The humiliation is only temporary, and when this kid dies, he will regain his freedom. And, as time goes on, he will become stronger as an adult. His lifespan has come to this moment, which is a mere 1,000 years, and only 1/10 of it has passed, which is like a 10-year-old human being. Oh, you still have a baby. Yangqing smiled. Don't think about it, those are the treasures that I have saved for 1,000 years, I will not let you. Taizu said vigilantly. A smile appeared on Yangqing's face, but he stopped talking. Humph. Taizu snorted coldly, swung his body, and his 5 claws clasped in the void and flew towards the sky. An hour later, the huge iron pillar roared and rushed into his cave. Along with a shock of dust, Yangqing jumped off the top of Taiju's head, and then glanced around. However, no matter how he looked for it, he didn't see the appearance of a little treasure. "Where did you hide the treasure?" Yang Qing asked curiously. He was so excited that he couldn't even notice it, which was really strange. "Humph, how can you humans know the abilities of our long family?" Taizu said proudly. Then, he moved his dragon claws and came to the protruding wall of the cave. Stretching out his dragon claws, he tapped lightly toward the front. Bang bang. Bang bang bang. Bang 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 bang. Bang bang. After 4 beats with different rhythms, the walls of the deep cave shook with a bang, and then the dust rustled. Immediately afterwards, Yang Qing was surprised to see that this was clearly a stone wall, and there was a gate in the place he felt was solid. The sound of boom rumble was thunderous, and the door slowly opened towards both sides. "It turns out that there is no hole in the sky," Yang Qing exclaimed. He had already seen the scenery inside through the opening stone gate. In the middle is a thick stone pillar, which is on the ceiling and just supports the entire inner structure. Surrounding the stone pillar, there is a pool of clear water in which the fish swim and cheer, very happy. On the periphery of Qingshui in the first ring, there is a platform with an area of nearly 1,000 square meters. There are all kinds of accessories, swords, and strange things scattered on it. "What's all this?" Yang Qing asked curiously, pointing to the golden objects on the shore. "It's all golden." Taizu sniffed in disdain, and then hummed, "It's all my treasure." He was too lazy to answer Yang Qing's question, causing the former to shake his head helplessly. Then, Yang Qing walked into the room and began to scan the treasures to see if there was anything valuable. For him, Wangjin has little practical significance. Tianlong people have never lacked money, not to mention that he has such strength and energy, and stands on the top of the world. While walking, Yang Qing shook his head. There were very few things he needed here. It wasn't until he reached a corner that his eyes narrowed. "This is devil fruit." Yang Qing never expected that devil fruits could be found here. He admitted that Tizu's treasure was indeed valuable, but that was only for ordinary civilians. Once the wealth is accumulated to a certain amount and the status reaches a certain level, the demand for money will be minimized. He has no shortage of money and therefore no need, so to speak, of no value to it. Really good. In order to collect devil fruits, he ran around, and only now did he collect 4. The purpose is to exchange for the newly appeared cheats. These secret manuals are of a higher level and can allow him to reach a higher realm and have stronger strength. The current power of the control fruit can spread 300,000 miles, which is nearly 3 times that of the battle with Whitebeard. However, how to control the entire planet is an extremely difficult problem. And if you want to complete your plan perfectly, you need this incomparably huge power. Of course, if the strength is not enough, it can be completed. However, at that time, as Drago said, if one is not good, the world will be destroyed. 4 devil fruits are enough for me to exchange swordsmanship with the most simple way of self-cultivation. Yes, the upgraded swordsman system can be said to be the sword fairy system. Everything about him points directly to the cultivation of immortals, and he has higher end power. And the techniques in it are also the techniques of sword immortals. 3 devil fruits, exchange for, introduction to pure young sword chi, 1 fruit, exchange for. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Swordsmanship. Yang Qing nodded with a smile, and the devil fruit in his hand disappeared immediately. The next moment, 2 secrets appeared in his mind. The robe on his body moved without wind. Yang Qing closed his eyes and began to digest this complicated and mysterious secret book. After a full quarter of an hour, when Yang Qing opened his eyes again, he saw Taiju's lantern-sized pupils. "You stole my treasure. What did you take?" Taizu asked suspiciously, as if he was not sure, but he was very suspicious. "No," Yang Qing said with a smile. "No, you must have taken it. I remember there was a fruit here. Yes, there was a fruit. It was a purple banana. You must have taken it. Did you eat it?" Taizu swung his own body, asked aloud. "No." Yang Qing still shook his head and refused to admit it. "I don't believe it." Taizu gave Yangqing a hesitant last look, turned his head, and quickly picked up the treasures on the ground with his dragon claws. Chapter 378 _ Yangqing refused to admit it, and Taizu had no evidence. This matter is finally over. Taizu Longclaw is very fast, carrying a strange package on his back, which makes Yangqing a little surprised. Because, he found that the white cloth-like package seemed to be inexhaustible. There were so many treasures in Taizu, and after they were put in, they did not grow bigger at all. What is this? It can hold so much. Asked curiously, Yangqing was puzzled. HMPH. Taizu snorted, stupid human, this is a cloth bag that ate the fruit, and can put anything in it. Yangqing touched his nose, and only now did he realize that it was the power of the devil fruit. However, this guy has quite a few devil fruits. By the way, Taizu, do you still have devil fruits? Yangqing asked. Devil fruits. Taiju's dragon claws paused. Do you mean strange-looking fruits? The one you robbed me earlier. Yes, that's the kind of fruit, have you seen it before? Yangqing asked. The system gave him a big problem. If he wanted to exchange for superb swordsmanship and secret books, he would need a lot of devil fruits. But something as rare as a devil fruit is rare even in the New World. Unless he can see a capable person, he will kill it, and then recreate it through his own ability. But obviously, he couldn't do it. Really, unless he's crazy. I am afraid that the capable people all over the world will fight with him desperately. No, that kind of fruit is very rare. Taizu shook his head, then continued to pack his things. Yangqing is not disappointed, if devil fruits are so easy to find. He has hidden many secrets in his heart for a long time, how can it be used so hard to find? 2 hours later, Yangqing rode on Taizu and rushed out of the cave. Behind him was the big white package. Compared to Taiju's stature, the package was indeed small, but to him, it was like a hill again. He was even able to lean against the package and lie down comfortably. Taizu, go around and help me find that fruit. Yangqing ordered, then narrowed his eyes. Sitting on the dragon like this, the feeling of freedom is really wonderful. He has been really comfortable these days. Now the situation is calm, everything just needs to wait for an opportunity. When that point of accumulation, the boiling water, pushes all the steam onto the lid, the pressure cooker lid will explode with a bang. Then the wave of the world will come. 3 days later, the iron pillar stopped in midair. Hey, wake up, human. Taiju's dull voice came out. Yangqing opened his eyes, looked at the surrounding white clouds, and said in a confused way, what's wrong? The entrance to the great waterway is below, do you want to take a look at the scenery? Taizu actually had such a mood, and there was a hint of ridicule in his words, which made Yangqing a little strange. He stretched, then looked down. The first thing that catches the eye is, without a doubt, the back-to-back river trend of the upside-down mountain. Looking down from a high altitude, such a spectacular sight is very exciting. The white clouds are blooming, and they are condescending, and everything below is seen by Yangqing. In front of you, the red Earth continent that traverses the entire planet is like a red dragon, lying prone on the ground, dividing the sea into 4 seas. Divide the land into countless islands. And because of the strange magnetic field in the world, it has created a chaotic meteorological force, which is amazing. In a sense, different scenes on different islands, and even the strangeness of the sea, as well as all kinds of magic, are all caused by the magnetic field. From the overall world view, Pirate World is a star different from Earth. Like the Earth, there is no doubt that it is also a habitable planet for human beings to survive and reproduce. The temperature is suitable and the 4 seasons are distinct. The only difference is that the strange magnetic field of Pirate World is simply abnormal, and the other is the strength of the creatures on it. Yangqing sometimes thought that if the world of pirates is also a planet in the universe, then, is the Earth here? Of course, he wouldn't really explore this question, because it was too far away. At this moment, after Yangqing glanced at the vast scenery below, he said softly, "Come down, there's an acquaintance there." After Taizu heard it, he didn't ask anything. The dragon's tail swayed and went down quickly. 30 seconds later, a gust of wind picked up, and a huge iron pillar landed on Gemini Cape, causing the sand and gravel on it to fly up, filling the sky with sand and dust. Kurokas felt the change outside, and his face changed greatly. Big storm. How can there be such a climate here? What's going on? He tightly blocked the doors and windows to prevent the wind from blowing in here. The gravel slammed on the doors and windows, and there was a continuous sound, like a dense gunshot. This violent wind scene lasted a full 15 seconds before it gradually came to a standstill. Let Kurokas take a deep breath. The weird wind really startled him. No, hoo, scared my old man to death. There is no doubt that if the strong wind just now blows on him, his old skeleton might not be able to save his life. Bending down, Kurokas took a few deep breaths before turning around and opening the doors and windows. The moment he opened the door and window, he was immediately shocked. This is long. And this guy. Grim Reaper. One person and one dragon. Let go immediately. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Kurokas was stunned. Pulled out alone, these two guys are legendary things, and then suddenly appeared together. The scene was quite shocking. Hi, old guy, we met again, long time no see. Yang Qing smiled and waved, remember me? Kurokas glanced at the huge iron pillar. This guy, with a look of disdain, snorted his nose, raised his claws, and scratched his body. Just now, the gravel touched his body, which made him a little itchy. The noble dragon family didn't even bother to talk to Kurokas. The god of death, Lucifer. Turning his eyes to Yang Qing again, Kurokas said with some emotion, I didn't expect that you could reach such a height. In the beginning, when I saw you. It's a big gap from this moment. It's like a dream. With a smile on his face, Yang Qing took a few steps forward and stood face to face with Kurokas. No, the world is changing too fast. Chapter 379 Confused. Haha, yes, since Roger, I didn't expect a character like you to come out. Kurokas laughed, and then he added with a sigh, how's that kid Bucky? Yang Qing was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, Bucky. That guy is now the captain of the first division of our pirates, a real big man. Kurokas shook his head. It's a bit incredible. So, Shinx, have you seen it too? Yes, I have seen all 3 of the 4 emperors, except for Big Umum. Yang Qing nodded. With a touch of surprise in his eyes, Kurokas looked at Yang Qing with some admiration. When I saw you for the first time, I didn't expect you to be able to reach such a level and become the new emperor on a par with the 4 emperors. You have rewritten the historical chapter of pirates, and the situation of the whole world will also undergo great changes. Among the splendid and magnificent, can there be a hero who dominates thousands of generations? This era is a good era, and I can't miss it. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed and he said seriously. What a great ambition. I hope you can accomplish what Roger didn't do. Later waves push forward waves, and the unfinished beliefs of predecessors still have to be completed by later people. Kuroka's eyes are very complicated. Human beings have inheritance, old people pass away, and young children are born. The newly born people carry the beliefs of the dead ones, and then pass on the will, which is reproduced from generation to generation, and passed on. One day, the world will be beautiful and perfect. This is a grand dream. In every era, there are countless outstanding people who are working hard and giving their lives. Roger is one, but before his, there must be countless people who are paying. Have you seen the boy with the straw hat? Yang Qing suddenly asked. Kurokas was startled and questioned, you mean Luffy? Yes, he should have entered the Great Channel. Just left a few days ago. That guy, like you, has a way to deal with Rab. Kurokas praised, a very special guy, I saw him as if I saw it. Before he could finish speaking, Yang Qing stopped him with a smile. Like Roger, doesn't it? Kurokas was stunned, how do you know? If I say that he is the most promising person in this era to ascend the throne of the Thief King in Shanghai City, would you believe it? Yang Qing asked with a smile in his eyes. What did you say? Kurokazu was shocked and couldn't believe it. At present, the person closest to the throne should be you. Even, you have a better chance than Whitebeard. You are among the 5 emperors, the most recent, you have already stood in front of the throne. Yang Qing laughed out loud. Kurokazu, he has great potential. I'm waiting for him to explode with that dazzling power. Without him, I wouldn't be able to accomplish my dream. He is a very important person. What do you think of the Straw Hat Boy? What qualifications does he have to be your opponent? Kurokazu said incredulously. No, you misunderstood, it is not an opponent. It is a helper, he will help me to ascend to the throne, and then march to a higher level. Whether it is power or status. It takes his power to change the world. This era is like a cloud of muddy water, and he is the one who lifted up the muddy water and made him ripple. And I'm the one who dumped the dirty water and replaced it with clean water. Yang Qing's words seemed very confident. At this moment, his eyes are deep and magical. He is like a man in control of a chess piece, thinking about it. When the chance to decide the winner comes, he will throw the ball and shock the world. So, what are you doing here now? Kurokazu wondered, staring at Yang Qing. It's not just to look at me, the old man. Yang Qing laughed loudly and patted Kurokazu on the shoulder. Don't be so rude, I'm really here to meet you and catch up. Cut. Kurokazu clearly didn't believe it. Actually, I want to ask you about something. Yang Qing's eyes suddenly became solemn. Although Shanks knows a little bit, he was only a trainee crew after all, and I don't know more from him than you. Quote. What do you want to ask? Kurokazu glanced at Yang Qing strangely. I want to know about Roger. Yang Qing said, actually, although I am already very strong at the moment, I know that I have entered a bottleneck. It will take a long time for my strength to grow again, and it is difficult for me to move forward again with my courage. Quote. I want to know how to get stronger. Kurokazu was startled and said with a smile, if you want to become stronger, then you should go to Rayleigh. What are you going to do with me, an old man? I'm just a ship doctor, and I can't help myself. No, Rayleigh can't help me, because only you know best what that guy did when he was most desperate and needed to go further. Yang Qing said sternly. Kurokazu shook his head, his face was quiet. I understand what you mean. When your strength has reached your level, I am afraid it is stronger than Whitebeard. Yang Qing didn't object, just looked at Kurokazu with a smile. Sure enough, Kurokazu's pupils shrank. You have reached the level of Roger, what a terrible guy. So, what you want to know should be. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. How Roger insisted on completing everything in the desperate situation of being seriously ill. Then, you are now confused. Kurokazu's simple words made Yang Qing tremble, and then stared at the old guy. These words are right, they point directly to Yang Qing's heart. His heart was really confused. After deciding that he wanted to become the Pirate King, he kept planning, and fabricating, and wanted to achieve this great cause flawlessly. However, at the same time, he felt a bit of confusion in his heart. That is, what is One Piece going to do? Change the era, open a new era. No, that's too broad. In other words, this goal is too big, and people don't know how to do it at all. Sure enough, you are the same as Roger. When Roger knew that he was terminally ill and would die soon, he was also lost. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, and he stared at Kurokazu. Chapter 380 Hope. Dreams, ambitions, are in a sense the same thing. However, the realization of these two needs strength. Roger wants to become One Piece, but he is trapped in a desperate situation. This is a disaster that God has brought to him. Every strong man in the sea has an incomparably strong spirit and willpower. However, after suffering such a blow, who can insist on fulfilling his dream? It is a kind of powerful spirit, but it is still able to realize one's dreams. It's hard to imagine how difficult it is. Roger is not a god, he is also a human being. He has also been depressed, disappointed, and desperate. When a terminal illness comes, he is enduring severe pain all the time, but what is the basis for persevering? Carocus took a few steps forward and came to the beach, looking at the undulating sea with complicated eyes. In a trance, he saw the guy who was still smiling every time he vomited blood and didn't care. However, only he knew how much bitterness was hidden behind the smile. No one is like this, and no one wants to be. Roger, how did he get over such difficulties? Carocus murmured, and Yang Qing stood beside him and listened carefully. He is different from Roger. One is facing a desperate situation, and the other is facing bottlenecks and confusion. But everything is the same, and he always has something to learn from. Perhaps, a conclusion can be drawn from it and a satisfactory answer can be drawn. When the terminal illness came, Roger once thought about giving up his dream and returning to his hometown to take care of his wife, but in the end, he still persevered. I didn't give up because he saw hope. Hope, yes, only hope can keep a person really going. So, Lucifer, you need to find your own ray of hope. Your confusion is just because you don't know where the road is. You have to understand, what do you need, what do you want, or what do you want to do to this world, this era? Carocus's words echoed clearly in Yang Qing's mind, making him startled. What do I want? What do I want? What do I do to this world, this era? Yang Qing's eyes gradually became clearer, and a smile appeared on his face. I am not alone. And relying on their strength, can I do something to the world, and have the power to change my destiny? What do I want to do and where I want to be? Not just in myself, but in all the power I can use. The powerful force did make Yang Qing a little lost. This is a common problem of the strong, they all believe in their own strength. This is necessary. When they are weak, they rely on their partners and teammates to improve each other. But gradually, due to various reasons, the speed of becoming stronger suddenly accelerated. They believed in themselves and their power to accomplish everything, but they let go of their partners and teammates. This, including Whitebeard, Kaido, and even Shanks is more or less. But at the realm of Yang Qing, what he needs more is a partner, but a person who usually looks smiling and is not worth mentioning at all. Such as civilians, such as pirates, his strength is thousands of times that of these people, but he also needs the help of these people. A person's strength will eventually come to an end, but if there are thousands of people standing behind him, then his strength will be inexhaustible. I finally understand. Yang Qing's eyes are getting brighter and brighter, and the smile on his face is getting bigger and bigger. What bottleneck does not exist at all? I just fell into a misunderstanding. From partner to ego and from ego to partner, what I need to believe is them, all the people I have come into contact with. To be a king, you must have convincing courage, wisdom, mind, and kindness. What I have to do now is not difficult and very simple, is to believe in others. Those who gain the way help more, those who lose the way get little help. Yang Qing finally understands the truth of this sentence. The reason why Luffy has the attitude of the king in the original book is that Shanks and others value him so much. It is precisely because he is born with such a temperament, born to be easy for ordinary people to approach, and has an extraordinary affinity. He is convincing, reliable and admirable. Thank you, Crocus, for showing me the path I should take in the future. Yang Qing said sincerely to Carocus, and bent deeply. It is rude to say that the old man's guidance to him in a few words greatly increased his chances of ascending to the throne of the King of Thieves in Shanghai City. I'm just talking nonsense, I can't help you. Carocus waved his hand and walked towards his hut. We've talked a bit too much, the old man is a little tired, you can do it yourself. Quote. Watching the old man return to his room, Yang Qing restrained the smile on his face, and he bowed deeply again and gave a salute. Then, he just walked towards the iron pillar. The chat is over, human. Taizu hummed, digging his ears out of boredom. Ha ha, Taizu, let's go, it's over. Let's do something. Yang Qing laughed. Oh, Do something. What do you mean? Taiju's body trembled. The air buzzed and dust was everywhere. Then get ready to go. Benlong is already very bored. Where to go? Then go to the small garden. Yongqing thought for a while, then smiled. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The little garden. Where is that? Taizu asked sullenly, then wagged his tail and roared lowly. His entire body suddenly rose from the ground to the sky, and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Where? I don't know, just fly along the Great Channel, and land when you see two giants. It's easy to identify. Yongqing laughed. Cut. Taizu snorted disdainfully. The flames appeared from the sky, and then disappeared instantly. His body zigzagged forward at a very fast speed, and in a blink of an eye, he sprang out for 100 miles. And Yongqing, at this moment, closed his eyes and began to immerse himself in his mind. He was studying the two cheats that he had just obtained. Swordsmanship.